interventions. There are other interventions which we believe the minister is going to announce and elaborate on Sunday, right? So this is just but one of the many interventions. And all of it, like I said, my brother, is aimed to achieve, amongst others, operational efficiency at NSFAS, and most importantly, to make sure that NSFAS remains focused on its core business, which is providing financial support to students.
I thank you so much. Veli Mbele, spokesperson for the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Bladen Nzimande. You heard their answer. What do you think? That's where we got to leave it. From the team this morning, Tracy Boomgart, Tizwingana Manashe, Tabelo Sibanyoni, and Marumu Kakana. Our senior producer, Ronald Piri, technical producer, Gahizu Batloko, and executive producer, Vutsi Lokoto. I'm Elvis Presley. We'll see you on Monday. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
In our top stories, e-tolls officially scrapped and NSFAS board dissolved. Good morning. Gauteng road users are breathing a sigh of relief as e-tolls are officially scrapped. This means with effect from midnight last night, road users will no longer be charged for the use of the e-toll network. The Transport Minister, Sindisiwe Chikunga, who made the announcement on the scrapping of e-tolls earlier this week, says motorists are still liable for what they owe. E-tolls were established in 2013 as part of the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project. The system faced open defiance from motorists and civil society organizations who refused to pay the e-toll fees. The Higher Education Department has confirmed it has dissolved the board of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. It says this follows discussions between the NSFAS board and the department's Minister, Bladen Nzimande. NSFAS beneficiaries comprise of mostly students at public education institutions across the country. They are planning a protest this morning against the department for continuing to pay NSFAS allowances through service providers whose contracts have been found to be invalid. The department spokesperson, Veli Mbele.
The purpose of this meeting with the board of NSFAS was for the minister to communicate his decision to dissolve the NSFAS board and to place the institution under administration. The legal effect of this decision will be communicated through the public, through a government gazette. And then on Sunday, the minister will communicate through a media briefing his rationale for this decision.
The lobby group Section 27 has welcomed the judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein in the case of the South African Council of Educators. The case involved two teachers who meted out corporal punishment on two primary school learners. In one of the incidents, the teacher used a PVC pipe to hit a learner across the cheek. This led to the learner undergoing emergency surgery. In the judgment delivered on Monday, the court affirmed the council had the duty to protect learners. Faranaz Veriava is head of Section 27's Education Rights Program.
Many other public interest organizations are having to address for many years now. We are seeing an increase in violence in schools, whether it's sexual violence or whether it's corporal punishment. And corporal punishment has been outlawed since 1996. But despite that, and despite two constitutional court judgments, we're still seeing a lot of corporal punishment.
The Mzananda Animal Clinic and shelter in Khayelitsha on the Cape Flats has appealed for funds to help stranded animals. This after gale force winds and torrential rains battered the clinic, which provides services for over 1,000 animals per month. The clinic's Marcel Duplessis.
Everyone is affected, and we should look at animals and humans as sentient beings and just, care for both of them. And I think quite a lot of the shelters were affected. We are plowing through it. We have a little maintenance team that's been working really hard on doing all the fixing. But with an animal clinic, you can never stop.
The family of former American football running back O.J. Simpson has requested privacy as it mourns his death. Simpson died yesterday at the age of 76 after what reports say was an illness related to cancer. In 1995, he was controversially acquitted in the high-profile trial of the murder of his wife Nicole Brown and a friend Ron Goldman. Sharon Bryce Peace reports from New York.
The once beloved American football hero fell from grace after his high-profile murder trial in the mid-1990s saw him acquitted, although 3 years later he was found liable in a civil suit brought by the victims' families. In 2007, Simpson was arrested in Las Vegas and charged with armed robbery and kidnapping, later convicted and sentenced to 33 years imprisonment. He was paroled in 2017, having served a minimum of 9 years of that sentence.
Recapping the top story, Gauteng road users are breathing a sigh of relief as e-tolls are officially scrapped. This means with effect from midnight last night, road users will no longer be charged for the use of the e-toll network. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It's the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal weekend and it kicks off tonight with the Swane Derby between University of Pretoria and Mamelodi Sundowns. And swimming, a young phenomenon, Peter Coetzee, clinches his 4th gold at the SA Swimming Championships, setting his sights on Olympic glory. Full details on these stories and more just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Just to clarify the Peacevale situation between Durban and Pietermaritzburg, some literature floating around about a blasting closure today. We have spoken to the contractors to confirm it. They say no, the blasting will be far enough off the highway that the N3 shouldn't have to be closed. So if you hear about a closure 2:30 to 3 this afternoon around Peacevale between Hammersdale and Keyridge, in all likelihood it probably won't go ahead. Cape Town, there's sand on Baden-Powell Drive this morning. The road is open, but it's very sandy, both at Monwabisi and around the coastal park area. And you've sort of got the situation where traffic has to flow out of one lane into sort of oncoming to get past it. So you need to be very, very cautious and careful driving Baden-Powell. And this is quite interesting. I'm not sure if it's happened before. There are two massive ocean liners that are parked up in the Cape Town Harbour. The Queen Victoria arrived late and the Queen Mary too arrived overnight last night. They're sitting side by side in the harbour. It is going to be a busy day today in the Cape Town CBD, Central and Waterfront area as those ocean liner passengers seek Ubers and transport options through the central Cape Town area. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
Hey, good morning. 6 minutes after 6. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Still not quite sounding, I think, like myself. Sorry about that. But obviously working on it, trying to sort out the voice. And Duo and Stanza have gone to go and find some lemon and honey, which optimistic will make a difference. I was told coffee wouldn't do it. And you know how I feel about coffee in the mornings, frankly. Anyway, lots going on this morning, as you know. All sorts of things happening. Still no load shedding. And you heard the chair of Eskom talking to Elvis just a few moments ago. I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, a lot coming out of the situation around Eskom, the situation around how it's all working out, and just the fact that we haven't had load shedding for quite some time. I think it does make everybody feel a little bit better. You know, the thing that we must be careful of, if I may just say, is over time, we've become so used to having no street lights and things like that, is that we shouldn't say, well, we don't need them back. We do need them back. And if load shedding does come to an end, we must sort of demand that things go back to how they were in terms of services like street lights and things like that. You know, I think we should just be very careful of that. The news, of course, perhaps the big news, is around higher education this morning. And Dr. Bladen Nzimande, the Minister of Higher Education, dissolving the board of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, putting it under administration, waiting to see exactly how all of that's going to play out. We'll hear from NSFAS in a little while. My first question, of course, will be, will the payments to students still be made? And the Minister saying that he's aware of and deeply concerned, deeply disturbed is the phrase, by the fact that students still have not been receiving the payments they're supposed to get. The DG's got certain things they need to do now. And then Ernest Khoza, the chair of NSFAS, resigned just before this announcement. There's a lot going on here, and this all goes back to the decision to use sort of fintech companies to make the payments to students and to sort of pay students what they were supposed to get, and how strange it's been since then. a very sort of strange story around it. The DA saying that Nzimande should actually resign over this. I think we know that that's not going to happen. But still, I think it's a very interesting story and a very important story. And then, of course, there was those corruption claims around money being paid this way and that way, and that money somehow ended up with the SACP. They strongly denied that. So, yeah, very important sort of story that's developing. I must tell you, yesterday we spoke to Dr. Marobo Matsapola, who is the person who first lodged the objection against former President Jacob Zuma. He's the only person mentioned in court papers who is sort of talking about this. I've been told that actually there were other objections. I don't know who those people would have been. However, he said yesterday that he told us that he, in fact, wanted the IEC to appeal the decision of the Electoral Court to overrule the IEC's decision to uphold his objection. I think I've got the timeline right there. And what's very interesting about this is there's a report in Times Live this morning. I don't see it anywhere else, but there's a report in Times Live that the IEC is actually taking a decision to appeal the Electoral Court ruling. And I must just say, if that is the case, and let's wait to see, it would be a big move because the IEC still hasn't seen the ruling, the actual judgment, the full reasons from the Electoral Court. So it would be quite a big thing if that's what they've decided to do. Let's see what happens. And we'll sort of stay in touch with all of the people and await statements and things like that. But certainly it's a big issue, as you know. There's a new mayor for Ekurhuleni this morning, in Kosindipendile Kakaza. He is from the ANC, and there was a big meeting in Ekurhuleni, and there was no opposition to his nomination, so no one else was nominated, so they didn't even vote. So the ANC and Action SA, was Action SA that started all of this, bringing a motion of no confidence against the previous mayor. The EFF, they expect to get 5 of the portfolio positions, so 5 of the members of the mayoral committee in Ekurhuleni. And it's very interesting because this really puts up a sort of, puts your finger on the situation between the ANC and the EFF, and there have been big problems in Ekurhuleni around this. Mzi Khumalo, who is the COGTA MEC in Gauteng, he said that everything that had happened in Ekurhuleni is proof that South Africa is not ready for coalition government. There might be a little bit of campaigning there because that's sort of one of the ANC's messages, is that you must vote for us because you're not ready for a coalition, because South Africa's not ready for a coalition. But still, an interesting comment that I thought that he made there. There's a new law that's been signed by President Cyril Ramaphosa. It's called the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill. And it basically says that if a company is aware that some of its associates or other companies or people it does business with are involved in corruption, that company has a duty to report it. It's quite a strange thing because I've often wondered, if you go into a company or if you go into an SOE, there's actually, when you sign a contract, it often says you must report corruption if you see it. It doesn't say what happens after that. So if, for example, Company A is in a deal with Company B, it becomes aware that Company B is involved in corruption, and it goes to a police station to report this. What happens after that? And so often we see nothing happens. So then if you're Company A, are you going to do it? I don't know. And I think there's something that we really need to look at there. I think it's a very sort of important issue to look at that there. There's a report from UCT about the Ingonyama Trust, and they say that there's no clear information on how beneficiaries are receiving money. The information is too vague. And in fact, for the last 10 years, the last time there was sort of clear information was in 2014. There have been so many questions about the Ingonyama Trust, and so many of them are really quite important questions. But very interesting to see how this is playing out. And I know supporters of the Ingonyama Trust are very sort of adamant that it's doing the right thing, but there have been various claims around it and how it's been paying out money and how it's managing money. And of course, the formation of it still, in some ways, very controversial. And Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi always denied that the Ingonyama Trust was really a sort of deal to get him into the elections in 1994. That is a very important issue. It's interesting to see. In the US, the 2 senators there who wanted a review of our eligibility for status in AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Program, they've dropped their bid to change that system. So, the claim was that we were sort of supporting Russia and Iran and Hamas and things like that. That was the claim from these American senators. They've dropped their bid to do that. So it looks like there won't be any changes there. And then you may sort of reveal your own age, your generation, by your reaction to this. The death yesterday of O.J. Simpson in the United States. He was 76. He was suffering from cancer. And you may well remember where you were during the O.J. Simpson trial. There's a group of people in front of me. I'm not going to ask them because they would all say they were at school or not even. I was at university at the time during the O.J. Simpson trial, and I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like it. It was really the first sort of showbiz trial that garnered so much attention, sort of one of these trials of the century, and it was absolutely massive. And it was interspersed with so many things happening in the United States at the time, and particularly in California, and all about race. I mean, it was shot through with race. And the claim was that he had shot his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. That was the claim. And he was acquitted famously, and the glove didn't fit, and Johnny Cochran showed what an amazing lawyer he is, and all of the things that happened at the time. But it was just such a big thing. And it was sort of, for us, I think, in South Africa, it was the first time we had seen 24-hour news, because you could watch CNN on the SABC in those days, and it was the first time we had seen anything like it. We'd never seen that kind of thing before, and so it was really interesting to sort of watch it all play out. And just a reminder of two things that happened afterwards. So he was acquitted, important to remember. There was a civil trial. In other words, he was sued for money for the deaths, in which he was found guilty, sort of, so it's a different thing. And then later he was accused and charged with armed robbery for trying to rob a casino. He said he was trying to get back his memorabilia. But before that, he had been a sort of icon in American society. There's so much to the story of O.J. Simpson. All right, good to hear from you this morning. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning, it's 6:15.
Wake up to the stories that warm your heart and ignite your spirit every morning on Expresso. Do you know a young hero making waves in your community? We want to hear from you. Share their inspiring stories with us on our WhatsApp line 063 408 8863, and let's celebrate their achievements together. And here's the best part. You could join us live in studio to tell your story. Expresso Morning Show every weekday morning at 6 to 9 a.m. only on S3.
The boys of Steve Barker resist to leave the pitch without a ticket to the semis. But there's a big problem. Kevin Hunt's boys say the last dance of happiness belongs to them. This is the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal battle. Stellies versus Matsatsansa Pitori on Saturday, 13 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Right, time for Honey, Lemon and Anne Musa. Anne, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
Well, I've got 1 mug of coffee, 1 cup of water, and 1 thing of honey and lemon, so let's see how it all goes.
All good. All good.
Coming up today, so, I mean, there are lots of different things. Times Live reporting the IEC is going to appeal this electoral court decision. I haven't seen a report on that anywhere else as yet, so I'm waiting to see if that'll come through.
Yes, also read the report earlier, and nothing much out as yet, so we'll kind of wait and see what happens
confirmation
there.
On
if
that.
there is, yes.
Yeah. What else is coming up today?
Well, now that e-tolls have officially been scrapped and, road users having a reason to celebrate, we will be getting reaction on this because motorists are still liable for what they owe. And Outers saying that motorists should refrain from paying the outstanding e-toll debts. So we will be looking at that. And also reaction following the announcement that the Higher Education Department has dissolved the board of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, and beneficiaries of NSFAS across the country are planning a march today, and they are against the Higher Education Department's continuation to pay allowances through service providers whose contracts have found to be invalid. The 6 suspects arrested for the alleged hijacking and murder of Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Vleers, they are expected to make their first appearance at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court today. Vleers was shot and killed in Roodepoort last week, and Gauteng police believing that the suspects are part of a syndicate. And in ongoing efforts, that is to combat criminality in Gauteng communities and improving working relations with the residents living in crime-heavy areas, the police ministry is also turning its focus on improving community policing, that is through relationships between communities and the police. So today, the police minister, Becky Cele, together with the management of the SAPS, will be having a a community, Imbizo, in Vanderbijl Park. And lastly, the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, as part of a working committee announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa, will be on an outreach visit to the eThekwini municipality in KwaZulu-Natal. This is to engage the leadership on responses to challenges in the municipality as well as discuss solutions. He is also expected to visit water and sanitation sites in Durban and surrounds as part of providing feedback to the communities on government's interventions to resolve the water and sanitation challenges experienced.
Thank you very much indeed, Anne Musa. We'll be listening on the radio 19 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 10 and 23. Johannesburg, cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 8 and 21. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, 6 and 22. Bombela, cloudy, early morning drizzle, partly cloudy from the late morning, 13 and 22. Polokwane, cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 12 and 20. Mahikeng, cloudy, becoming partly cloudy, 10 and 24. Vryburg, partly cloudy, 8 and 25. Mangung, fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy, 5 and 21. Kimberley, fine, 6 and 24. Uppington, fine, 13 and 29. Cape Town, fine, a light to moderate southerly wind, 14 and 23. George, fine, a light and variable wind, 9 and 18. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, a light to moderate westerly, 12 and 22. East London, fine, partly cloudy in the afternoon, a moderate to fresh southwesterly wind, 13 and 19. eThekwini, fine, partly cloudy from the afternoon, a moderate to fresh southerly, 14 and 23. Richards Bay, fine, partly cloudy from the afternoon, a moderate to fresh southerly wind, 15 and 24. And Pietermaritzburg, fine, partly cloudy from the afternoon, 7 and 20.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Well, in Gaza, it's been confirmed that 3 sons and 4 grandchildren of the Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh have been killed by an Israeli airstrike. The news comes as there's still talks underway between Hamas and Israeli officials, along with officials from the US and several other parties in Cairo. Negotiations. I understand, in fact, that we don't have our guest at this point. Sorry about that. We will come to the story in just a moment. It's an important story, as you know, developing. 21 after 6.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, let's talk about e-tolls. What's the state of play there?
1 second before midnight, will officially myself and the minister switch off the e-tolls and making this part of our roads history and ensure that whoever that was not using or was protesting against e-tolls will start a new chapter of rebuilding our roads as not e-toll, but as ordinary roads that can be utilized by anyone, anytime. Whatever moment they want to utilize it.
Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. So there we are at midnight. E-tolls finish and cloud.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Sorry about that. Well, in Gaza, it's been confirmed now that 3 sons and 4 grandchildren of the Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh have been killed by an Israeli airstrike. The news comes as there's still talks underway between Hamas and Israeli officials, along with officials from the US and several other parties in Cairo. Those negotiations are supposed to see Israeli hostages being held by Hamas being swapped for Palestinian prisoners being held by Israel. But there have also been reports that Hamas has indicated it may not have 40 Israeli hostages who are still alive to swap in the deal. Naeem Jina is a senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. Naeem, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
There are so many families who've lost so many people since those Hamas attacks in October. When the sons and grandchildren of one of the leaders in this conflict are killed in this way, does it change the nature of this conflict? Does it make it more personal, or was it sort of personal anyway?
Well, of course, it was extremely personal all the time, and this is why Palestinians have responded in the way they have. But Ismail Haniyeh himself, until these 7 members of his family were killed, had lost just over 50 other members of his family. But certainly, I mean, your children and grandchildren is different to your nephews and nieces, I would say. Does it make it personal? I think for good leaders, it shouldn't. It should, it's a personal loss, but that shouldn't change the game in terms of the politics or indeed the military aspect of it.
The talks underway in Cairo, and I mean, I suppose at the moment the only hope we really have to end this conflict. Is there any reason to believe or to become more optimistic since we last spoke to you? I mean, is there any hope for this to end temporarily at least? Certainly the Americans are putting a lot of effort into it, but I mean, it's not like they're going to stop arming Israel in the meantime.
Well, for one thing, they're not much closer to a deal than they were the last time we spoke. I think that some of the bottom lines, certainly from the Palestinian side, the Israelis are still refusing to meet. But secondly, that the assassinations 2 days ago of those 7 Ismail Haniya's children and grandchildren, I think is an indication that Israel is trying to change the game in Cairo in some way. I think the hope and expectation from the Israeli side is that kind of an assassination, very, very personal for the leader of Hamas, and on the day of Eid, that could result in a kind of wild reaction from Hamas that would then force Hamas into a position where they'll have to make more concessions. If they go crazy and start, let's say, wild attacks into Israel, that would, in a sense, weaken their position at the negotiating table. I think that was the hope from the Israeli side. That hasn't happened, and hopefully it won't. If it doesn't happen, then the negotiations will still be where they were on Tuesday, but still not much closer to a deal yet.
I suppose a cynic would say the Israelis were trying to do to Hamas what Hamas tried to do to Israel with the October attacks. Hope the other side overreacts.
I think that I don't think that Hamas or the Palestinian resistance expected the kind of overreaction from Israel that they got post October 7th.
Okay, no, that's an important point. I was surprised to see the claim in the Western media that Hamas has indicated that it doesn't have 40 Israeli hostages who are still alive. And this is important because, firstly, it's people we're talking about, but it's also for Hamas. These are important sort of bargaining chips. I know we shouldn't reduce people to that, but that's kind of where we are. I would have thought they were very valuable to Hamas. Do we know what's happened to so many of these hostages?
A good number of them have been killed in Israeli strikes. And then, of course, 1 or 2 directly by Israeli forces. We saw that one incident where Israeli soldiers walked out with white flags and got shot. But a good number have been killed in Israeli strikes. But it seems to me the way that I read that comment from the Hamas side is that they don't have 40 prisoners alive who fit the category that Israel wants. So, for example, Israel is saying that all the women who are left should be released. Hamas doesn't regard female soldiers as in the category of women who would be released. They are soldiers. So there are a number of soldiers that are still remaining, but they don't fit that category that Israel wants. Similarly, I think there are senior officers that Hamas doesn't regard as being elderly people. They are soldiers. And so Israel is trying to claim that. So I think that's the idea. I'm pretty sure, and it's very murky at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that there are 40 Israeli hostages who still are alive, but that or more than that, but the majority of them are military, cannot be regarded as civilian.
Okay.
Secondly, the issue of which hostages are alive or dead is also a difficult one for Hamas to calculate and pinpoint, and this is because the hostages are divided between different resistance factions within Gaza. And between the factions, the kind of proper communication is very difficult. Even within the Hamas military forces themselves, different units operate on their own. And so it's difficult to communicate these things easily. And so it's difficult even for their leadership to know with certainty how many hostages are definitely alive that are being held by different groups.
Naeem Jinnah, thank you very much indeed. I think that does explain the issues that we've seen. Senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, 28 after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Sundowns won't be taking Tuks lightly.
Yeah, it's a battle of brains versus brawn on the pitch. That's tonight, a big one, as we see the challenge of formidable Mamelodi Sundowns. They'll be playing at Tuks in their own backyard. Kickoff is set for Lucas Masterpieces Maripa Stadium in Pretoria. Tonight, 7 p.m. Sundowns are leading the league, but they do face a spirited Tuks side that impressed against Swallows with a 2-1 victory in the last round. With expert wing backs and a strong back three, Tuks aren't to be underestimated. Let's listen now to Sundowns coach Rulani Mokoena.
It's a big game for us. We haven't been in this position in a very, very long time, where at this point in the season we're still competing for 3 more trophies. And so we just have to make sure that as the leadership we are on top of our game, and we show the energy and the desire that the players have to breed off from, and it starts with us.
And the weekend promises more action with SuperSport United taking on Stellenbosch FC. That's tomorrow at 3 p.m, followed by Amazulu against Orlando Pirates at 6 p.m. And wrapping up the weekend, Chippa United confront TS Galaxy. That's on Sunday. More action now. The Liverpool team were stunned by Serie A's 6th-place side Atalanta at Anfield as the Italians cruised to a 3-0 first-leg lead in their Europa League quarter-final tie. And there were goals from Ollie Watkins and John McGinn, which gave Aston Villa a 2-1 first-leg lead over Lille, and that was in their Europa Conference League quarter-final. Moving on to some other action, and this time Jake White has reportedly opted to leave most of the Bulls' key players at home, and that's for tomorrow's Champions Cup quarter-final against the Northampton Saints. The Bulls are attempting to make history at Franklin's Gardens by advancing to the semi-finals of the European Cup competition for the first time. And finally, O.J. Simpson, the former American football star turned actor who had controversially cleared off a double murder, has died at the age of 76. We'll bring you more of these and other stories. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The latest on the Soweto taxi dispute. You'll speak to the Gauteng Transport MEC in the next half an hour. You're with SAFM leading the conversation. Day 16 of no load shedding at 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the remains of 6 of the 45 people who were killed in a bus crash in Limpopo at the Easter weekend will today be handed over to their families for repatriation to Botswana. The organisation Undoing Tax Abuse Outer has added its voice to calls for motorists to refrain from paying the outstanding e-toll debt. E-tolls have been scrapped with effect from midnight last night. And beneficiaries of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme across the country are planning to protest this morning. The beneficiaries, who comprise of mostly students at public education institutions, are against the Higher Education Department's continuation to pay NSFAS allowances through service providers whose contracts have been found to be invalid. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's a big one this morning. If you're coming from Soweto up through to Randburg, 2 lanes are closed for peak time roadworks on the M1 North going into Malabongwe. The big squeeze is on with traffic parking back through Bayers Nordia. By the next time we touch base, that traffic's probably going to be back through 14th Avenue and back deep into sort of Rudaport territory. So good idea to seek some alternative routes this morning and stay off that N1 North. You can imagine 2 lanes closed through the rush hour on perhaps one of the busiest highways in Gauteng. Apart from that, there's what we're hearing is either a truck fire or a truck crash. It's on the R59 coming away from the Vaal just by the blockhouse services. Very heavy queues into that. In fact, Penelope on X.com telling us that traffic isn't moving. So perhaps if you're leaving Meyerton, leaving for Runahung, you might want to take the R82 through Walkerville to avoid the worst of that backlog. Durban just starting to build up on the N2, getting up through Tweeny Hill into Prospector, and then more traffic just starting to slow up through the roadworks as you come up through Spaghetti Junction. Cape Town this morning, busy on the highways going in, all fairly standard though. And I'm not sure whether this has happened before or whether it's something unique, but there are two of the world's biggest ocean liners parked side by side in the harbour. Queen Victoria and the Queen Mary 2 have both arrived into Cape Town Harbour overnight last night. That's going to cause a lot of onlooking on the elevated freeway as you go past them, but it'll also put a lot of their passengers looking for transport options between the harbour and the CBD and the waterfront. So a busy day in central Cape Town in store. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
In Taoleng, Lechela, second day on the job. Good morning. How are you feeling this Friday?
Morning, Stephen, and happy Friday. I'm so happy. This last one for the week.
Indeed. Asian markets, US markets, how's it all looking?
Well, Stephen, the inflation-led sell-off we saw was pretty short-lived as most markets retraced losses. U.S. markets ending Wednesday mostly in the green, with the tech stocks leading the rebound, sending the Nasdaq to a record high. Now, local markets still suffered, closing the day off in the red. I guess we're kind of playing catch-up and digesting the possibility of a Fed rate cut in September instead of June. Over in Asia, stocks held steady, starting the day in green territory, following the somewhat upbeat mood that we've seen from the US as tech stocks powered through and producer inflation numbers moderately rose. In currency markets, the rand little changed and still trading above 18.70 to the dollar.
And then the European Central Bank holding rates steady.
Yeah, now this move was expected, and it's the fifth straight meeting where policymakers on that end have kept rates steady. But the tide could be turning. In a statement, the central bank's head, Christine Lagarde, gave its clearest signal of an upcoming rate cut. This could happen as soon as June, and it comes despite uncertainty over the US Fed's next moves. Now, a factor influencing a possible ECB rate cut is the region's slowing inflation. We've been seeing a consistent trend of slowing prices since about the last quarter of 2023. And like the Fed, the ECB's inflation target is 2%. Now, Stephen, the last consumer prices print was at 2.4% in March, edging closer to that all-important target.
And Sibanye-Stillwater, they're going to cut more jobs.
Now, this has been playing out for quite some time. A number of local miners have been cutting jobs in an attempt to reduce expenses. That's as profits have been hit by lower metal prices, as well as those logistics issues at Transnet. Sibanye-Stillwater, as you mentioned, one of those miners, and the group recently announced additional restructuring at some of its South African gold mining operations. That could result in an additional 4,000 jobs being lost. Now, this is the third time in just a year that it's been cutting its workforce. The last restructuring process saw about 2,600 people being laid off at its platinum operations. Now, the miner is currently in the process of consulting with organized labor and various reps that represent employees.
In Taoleng, thank you very much indeed. In Taoleng, Lechela, back with us in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning. Russia's exporting diesel to Sudan. Obviously, they're looking for new markets.
Stephen, they're looking for the new market, but also the EU embargo on Russia since 2023 February. It has caused for this diesel and oil to move towards Brazil, Turkey, Asia, and Africa. But the latest data is revealing that Russia has been now exporting some of its diesel to Sudan, to Port Sudan, for this during this month, beginning of April, and as well as next week there will be another load that will be sent to Port Sudan from Russia. As you said, this shows the challenge that Sudan is going through, even if there's a conflict going on there. But Russia is now expanding towards Sudan, despite Sudan was relying on Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates.
And then Sudan's new energy minister saying government would Senegal's new energy minister saying they would renegotiate oil, gas and mining contracts.
Stephen, Birame Sole Diop has come out clear as a new energy and mining minister of Senegal, taking from the current new president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who said that they will definitely look at the oil and gas and mining contracts. But they are looking at one thing to say, let the audit be done first, and after the audit, they will have to relook at those contracts, whether are they actually benefiting the Senegalese people, and if they have to look at the existing contracts, how to amend them. Remember that Senegal, Stephen, has been in this oil and gas industry for some time. 2024, we are talking about 82% of some of their gas and oil going to Europe. Now, it is important for them to look around nationalizing their oil and gas, and hence the Minister Birame Sole Diop is taking these firm measures that they will definitely review some of these contracts.
And then the United Kingdom returning dozens of artifacts looted from what is today Ghana. It was 150 years ago, hey?
Stephen, they are returning them, but it's a long-term loan. Others are saying that they are expected to be returned today in Ghana. Those artifacts, Stephen, they are very important if one looks at some of their nature. When you look at the gold peace pipe, you look at the sort of the stage. This was the cleansing of the soul of the king in terms of the culture of Ghana. But now, as said, Stephen, it is for a loan. Remember, those things were stolen from Africa. Now you have to bring them back on a loan agreement, not with government, but with the kings in Ghana. And others are saying that it was high time that the repatriation of the cultural artifacts in Africa should not be on conditions of such loans or at the same time such of monetary, because they were stolen from the African continent.
And then in the Comores, people escaped from prison. How did they do it?
Stephen, they just walk out of the main gate of the jail in the capital of Moroni, and others are saying that it was blamed on the negligence of the security guards for the early morning jailbreakers. And we're talking of 38 men who appeared to others say it was a pre-planned escape that happened in the ocean island of Comoros. This is not for the first time, Stephen. Since 2020, actually, there have been many escapes in the prisons of Moroni in Comoros. And most of them, they happen even when there are celebrations in the country where everybody is just on the streets. And prisoners, they don't even make many means, even. They just walk out of the main gate of the prison. Hence, like today, I mean, we are having this week those prisoners who have escaped in the prisons of Comoros, 38 of those men who have left, and they are still searching for them.
And then it's an important day for the person responsible for the name of the British rock band Kaiser Chiefs. You know who I'm talking about.
Stephen, he was a former captain of UK Leeds United, the first South African to have captained the two World Cup finals in France 1998, South Korea and Japan in 2002. We're talking about Lucas Ntuba Radebe, who was born on this day, 1969. He will have 1055. Also, the former president, Stephen, is 82 years. I thought, let me stick to the soccer player. And the former president, Jacob Zuma, is also celebrating 82 years today.
And Pravin Gordon. Pravin Gordon and Jacob Zuma have the birthdays on the same day.
I know. It's three of them. I thought, let me take sports rather than politics. But as you say, PG as well as JZ, they are celebrating their birthday today.
I've always wondered if they send cars to each other. Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. 19 minutes to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Join Smile Foundation for a movie night under the stars featuring Sing 2 on Saturday, 20th of April at Old Ed Sports Grounds. To book, visit smilefoundationsa.org. This is an SABC supported initiative.
Mamelodi Sundowns ladies believe they belong at the top and they want the vital 3 points. But Lindalani ladies are on a mission to shock Banyana Ba style. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns ladies FC versus Lindalani ladies FC. The Sunday 14 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Well, you know the number 086 000 2032. Residents in Soweto this week battling to get to work. Members of the Wata Taxi Association refused to operate for 3 days and protested plans by the Gauteng Transport Department to stop them from operating. Wata's been involved in a really violent dispute with another taxi association, Nanduwe. That's led to several people being killed. The Gauteng Transport MEC, Kedibona Diala Tlabela, says she wants to stop them both operating to stop the violence there. Well, the MEC is on the line for you now. MEC, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to listeners of SAFM.
Are you still going ahead with the plan to stop both Wata and Nanduwe from operating?
Yes, we have gazetted our intent for withdrawal of their operating licenses.
So if they operate, what will happen? Will you impound their vehicles?
It's an intent. So they must do submissions. Why shouldn't I suspend the permit? As is now, we have presence of law enforcement agencies on the ground on a daily basis.
Okay, so if they operate at this moment, would they be operating legally while you gazette the notice of intent and they respond?
What's happening is, and maybe perhaps one should really clarify why the intent and or why did we invoke Section 91 of the NLTA. Stephen, this has happened and has been happening since the time of our late former MEC in the Grootes. And every MEC in Gauteng has been dealing with this. And I think the section has been invoked several times. And on a daily basis, we sit with various different stakeholders on this matter, just to see what happened previously, what were the decisions, including the court orders that they both have as two associations. And what we are trying to do is to come up with finality to this matter. Remember, it's not only about them fighting over a route. It affects ordinary citizens of Gauteng in those parts of Soweto.
No, sure. I'm not arguing. I'm sorry, MEC. Perhaps I wasn't clear. I'm not arguing about that at all. I mean, from what I can see, you're well within your rights to do what you've done, and it's a very difficult situation. What I'm trying to get to is, at this moment, do they have a license to operate, or have you already withdrawn the license? Or if you start the process, so you said that they had a chance to respond. So what I'm trying to get to is, for the moment, this Friday at 7:15, they can still operate right now until the process is finished. Is that right?
Correct. They are allowed to operate, and I'm assuming they are operating as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
According to the information I'm gathering on the ground.
Okay. One of the causes of this is that an official in your department seems to have made a decision. The National Taxi Alliance told us this week that the decision was made over a weekend, which is a bizarre thing, but had made a decision to allow one association to use a route that was already being used by another association. Is that how this happened?
It's a mix of a whole lot of issues, and we admit that there's weaknesses within the system, and they themselves also, as a taxi association, have to an extent allowed a conducive environment for fraudulent and corrupt activities that are happening. And we have subjected some of the issues to the SIU, as well as currently the official that appeared to a hearing this week. We have 17 that are charged. We are now going to be working with the South African Insurance Crime Bureau to overhaul the whole system, to investigate what really transpired during those years, because there's a pattern that we pick up when we try to analyze all the routes that have conflict. There's a serious pattern, and there's serious weaknesses in the system. Let me just alert people of Gauteng and general South Africans that the system has a lot of leaks, and those who are working in that area took advantage of that. Those working, I mean, both the official of government and the taxi association.
I mean, someone paid the official, right? I mean, that seems pretty obvious. You may not be able to say that, but from what I can see, it looks like that.
They are paying officials.
Thank you very much indeed. I do appreciate the time. MEC Kediboni Diale-Tlabele is the MEC for Transport in Gauteng. Very difficult situation, of course, for anyone to deal with when this sort of thing happens. And as she says, it's been a long-running problem in Soweto. 13 minutes now to 7.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
New information's been released about how the police respond to emergency calls when you phone 10-111. Under the current system, there are 3 categories. Alpha is the most urgent call, Charlie's the least urgent, Beta is calls somewhere in between. In data released this week, it seems there's almost no difference between the police response times for Alpha calls and Charlie calls, or no difference between the most urgent calls and the least urgent calls. David Bruce is an independent researcher in policing and security. David, good morning. This is quite strange data. Is it possible to know why there seems to be really no proper use of these categories? If you make a very urgent call, you're going to get a police car in roughly the same time if you make a very sort of unurgent call.
Right. Well, I must say that I'm basically puzzled by the data, and it puzzles me as to why this is data that's issued by it's signed off by both the National Commission and the Minister of Police. And my question is why they're even releasing this data, because at face value it doesn't make any kind of sense. So, for instance, what it's showing is that an alpha call, which is typically a crime in progress requiring immediate and urgent police response. For instance, in KwaZulu-Natal, there's a 7-second difference between those calls, 21 minutes and 44 seconds, versus the lowest priority category of calls, a Charlie call, which is 21 minutes and 51 seconds. And similarly, in the in the Northwest, it's a difference between 36 minutes 4 seconds and 36 minutes 1 second between the highest priority category and the lowest priority category, and so on. So at face value, this data just doesn't make any sense, because one would expect there to be a major difference between alpha calls and Charlie calls, and so I would ask why this data has actually been released in its current format.
Is it a suggestion, perhaps, that the system is not efficient? If you have a low priority call and you get a police car arriving very quickly, you might be very pleased. I mean, for most people, that would be a sort of a good thing. But it means that if there's a priority call, that car can't go there. What I'm trying to get to is, may this show that perhaps the 10111 system, that whole calling of emergency system, is not really being run very efficiently, or could be made more efficient? Let me put it like that, rather.
Well, a colleague of mine, did do some research on this several years back. And so, there might be a range of different explanatory factors. It's possible, for instance, that the responders are not logging the calls, as soon as they get to the scene. They aren't notifying the 10111 center as soon as they get to the scene, and so on. Nevertheless, one would expect, for instance, from a police management point of view, one would want to know, have proper data on, response times and so on. And so one would, look to, the one question is, when they released this data, were they even aware that, at face value, it doesn't make any sense? And, so they've released this data in response to a question in Parliament, but there's no indication in the reply that there's anything odd or difficult to understand about the data.
Are the response times good enough for urgent calls? I mean, I suppose the real question is, if you phone the police in an emergency, will there be a quick enough response? And obviously everyone will have a very different experience of that.
Right. Well, again, I would say that it shows the basic shortcomings of this data, because I would, on the one hand, it's showing that, for instance, in Gauteng, there is a major difference of the average time is somewhere in the region of about 12 minutes, while in the Northwest, or in, let's say, the Northern Cape, the time taken is more like 60 minutes. And at some level that makes sense, because there's the distances that police would have to cover in the Northern Cape are on average far greater than in Gauteng. On the other hand, I would think that we don't know how many of these calls in the Northern Cape are, for instance, in Kimberley. So many of them might be a call to a police station that is relatively close by. And, so it would suggest to me that it would be, for this data to be of any use, it would be, important to disaggregate it between, for instance, metropolitan areas and other parts of the province, or between urban areas and other parts of the province. As it stands, it's pretty opaque.
David Bruce, thank you. Independent researcher in policing and security, 7 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The N1 coming out of Soweto to Randburg, very heavy. Either get onto some alternative routes or make sure you got plenty of time to get through it and make sure you fancy some traffic backlog if you are going that way. There's a crash before Bayers Nordia, and then there's a double lane closure for roadworks going up to Malabongwe Drive. The traffic is heavy and really just hardly moving from 14th Avenue. When we next touch base, it'll be back through to Gordon Road and shortly thereafter back into Soweto. It's the forecast for a very heavy N1 north into that scene. Also, truck fire incident at Randvale. It looks like it's on the northbound, but there's a massive backlog of traffic coming through from Randvale Road up through the Blockhouse Services area towards there. You may find the road is closed with a divert out to the sort of local route that runs parallel up towards the Heidelberg Road. So just give yourself plenty of time to get off the Vale this morning if you're using that R59. Otherwise, look at the R82. The Walkerville option is your alternative. R21 queuing at Clayville already into the roadworks on your way to the airport, and a crash on the M1 south of the old Joburg Road. Starting to pack things up coming through Brockfontein interchange. Durban, the M7. Breakdowns out by Pinetown by the N3, so from Hunstetman going into Pinetown, that's quite slow. Lights are off on the Higginson Highway at Mobeni Heights, so heavy delays out of Chatsworth today. And if you go out of Cape Town, Somerset West area up towards Stellenbosch, you've got two traffic lights. The R44 Broadway Boulevard at Main Road, that's Lord Charles. That junction's out. That's already backlogging over the N2. And then the Annandale junction further up, which has been out since the storms, is still out with some queuing pressure at that junction as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Nna lebitso la ka ke Bonolo Moagi di Bantswang ba re ke Miss B Morara Miss T Moagi D the Bonnie B Bonbon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
University of Johannesburg and University of the Western Cape have a mammoth task to illustrate what a pitch distinction looks like. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the varsity derby, UJ Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC, the Sunday 14 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
4 minutes to 7 the time. You've heard of residents in several metros and several places who claim they may start to refuse to pay their rates in councils because they're not receiving services. Well, in Harrismith, Maluti Pafong, it seems residents are now using private companies to provide services like removing their rubbish. They're filling in their own potholes. Some reports that some people there are also refusing to actually pay their rates. Willem Koenig is the chair of the Harrismith, Ntabazwe and Tsiame Residents Association. Willem, good morning.
Good morning.
What level of services are you getting in that area at the moment?
We cannot call this any level of services. There's a non-existence of services in our town.
So what do your members do in that situation? I mean, it's very difficult. I understand some people are filling in their own potholes, collecting their own rubbish, things like that.
We as an association has got members that pays a membership fee. We as the association then removes the refuse for them. There are people that does a private service to other people to remove their refuse. We as HIT, Residents Association, does repair the potholes in our town and we in the last 8 months put in just over 120 tons of tar in repairing our potholes in town.
In some councils, people have tried to stop residents from fixing potholes. Has anyone tried to stop you?
No, we have not been stopped. We have declared disputes regarding the non-service or the lack of service. And we would like them to please come and talk to us, where we have approached them to sit in their council, and they just don't come back. They're not resolving our disputes. So we're more than happy for them to try and stop us.
Okay. I mean, I think there are one or two court cases where people have said that actually you're not allowed to fix the potholes. You're not worried about that.
We've heard of that. Yes, we're not worried. They must please come, and they cannot. Legally, I can't see them stopping us for fixing where I'm supposed to drive and not damage my own vehicle.
Is it true that some of your members are also not paying their rates to the council?
There are some members that do not pay their rates. I myself are withholding currently my rates because I have declared a legal dispute, which I'm allowed to do by the Municipalities Financial Act. There is no services. As I said previously, for 7 years, no refuse has ever been removed in my street, my house, my business. They just don't fix our lights in our town. They don't cut the grass on the pavements. They don't keep the parks up. There is no services, non-existent. I cannot pay them money that they're going to squander on something else.
And the services you consume, so I'm talking lights and water, I mean, do you get those from the municipality or do you do it yourself?
Electricity is a prepaid system, so that obviously is being paid for, and the municipality cannot even pay that money over to Eskom. Water is being supplied by the municipality, but do I get an account of 3,500 Rand a month, which is exorbitant and totally out of line. There is no water meter readings taken. The court is very clear on that. You can do two accounts where you don't read the meter. A third one has to be read. Our water and lights has not been read in the last 6 years.
Sure. There must be, I mean, are there many people, I mean, across the society in Maluti or Pafong who sort of feel the way you do? Do you get support from everybody there or only some people?
No. There's a broad community that feels the same way as we do. Yes, we do not have that support in joining us as an association, but businesses all over Harrismith joins us. There are people that were trying to sell their businesses, purely to the fact that they're getting to an age they cannot operate the business and they do not have children taking a business over. They can't sell their businesses, as the people interested in just said to them straight out, you do not have an infrastructure in your town that will be enabling us to run a proper business.
Willem Koenig, thank you. Chair of the Harrismith, Intabazwe and Tsiami Residents Association. In a moment, an incredible story about the number of robberies at schools in Nelson Mandela Bay. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, Ramaphosa visits site of Limpopo bus crash and calls for motorists to refrain from paying e-toll debt. Good morning. The remains of 6 of the 45 people who were killed in a bus crash in Limpopo at the Easter weekend will today be handed to their families in Mukopane for repatriation to Botswana. Health authorities say the remains have been positively identified. Yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Botswana counterpart, Mokgweetsi Masisi, visited the crash site. The bus was transporting people from Botswana to an Easter pilgrimage at the St. Ignace Zion Christian Church in Moria, when the bus lost control and plunged down a bridge on a mountain pass. The South African Health Department spokesperson Neil Shikwambana says the process of identifying the remains is continuing.
The process of receiving the loved ones happens at the backdrop of the visit by the two excellencies from the two countries, that is President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa and also His Excellency President Eric Masisi of Botswana, who visited the scene of the accident and also committed to the families and also the whole of Botswana and South Africa that the process of scientifically identifying the remaining victims will be fast-tracked.
The organisation Undoing Tax Abuse Outer has added its voice to calls for motorists to refrain from paying their outstanding e-toll debt. E-tolls have been scrapped with effect from midnight last night. This means road users will no longer be charged for the use of the e-toll network. The Transport Minister, Sindisiwe Chikunga, who made the announcement on the scrapping of e-tolls earlier this week, said motorists are still liable for what they owe. Stephanie Fick is Outer's head of legal.
Don't pay your e-toll debt. If you were convinced right from the start that you're not going to pay your e-toll debt, I don't know why you would do that now. The historic debt is, how are they going to enforce it? So that's the problem. So in our view, that's a fallacy. It is a theory.
Beneficiaries of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS across the country are planning to protest this morning. The beneficiaries, who comprise of mostly students at public education institutions, are against the Higher Education Department's continuation to pay NSFAS allowances through service providers whose contracts have been found to be invalid. Meanwhile, the department has confirmed it has dissolved the NSFAS board. The department spokesperson Veli Mbele says the dissolution follows discussions between the NSFAS board and the department's minister, Bladen Zimande.
The purpose of this meeting with the board of NSFAS was for the minister to communicate his decision to dissolve the NSFAS board and to place the institution under administration. The legal effect of this decision will be communicated through the public through a government gazette. And then on Sunday, the minister will communicate through a media briefing his rationale for this decision and whatever actions that this decision implies and what the department is going to do henceforth.
Understaffing, limited resources and low salaries are some of the challenges public servants in the Free State say they deal with. They say the challenges are affecting their efforts to contribute to the improvement of government's delivery of basic services. The public servants engaged with the Public Service and Administration Minister, Noxolo Kivit, during an imbizo in Bloemfontein yesterday. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called on his counterparts in countries from Europe to China to help to dissuade Iran from launching a strike against Israel. Blinken has asked them to make it clear to Tehran that an escalation of the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza is in no one's interest. The BBC's Lucy Williamson reports.
Iran's supreme leader has said Israel must be punished for the strike on its Damascus consulate. Israel has promised direct retaliation for any attack on its soil. It's worried enough to cancel leave for all combat units and call up its Air Force reserves. Neither side is seen as wanting all-out war right now, but the stakes of any miscalculation are high. Israel, fighting on two of its borders and under attack from groups in Syria, Yemen and Iraq, faces a dangerous moment in what is already a regional war.
Recapping the top story, the remains of 6 of the 45 people who were killed in a bus crash in Limpopo at the Easter weekend will today be handed to the families in Mokopane for repatriation to Botswana. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. It's soccer with the Nedbank Cup quarterfinals taking the spotlight, kicking off with the University of Pretoria playing Mamelodi Sundowns. And we also have action from the tennis courts as Novak Djokovic comes from behind to go through at the Monte Carlo Masters. All this and more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy off the Vaal this morning. A truck fire incident on the R59 near Blockhouse. Looks like the road's probably closed because there's a big backlog on the 59 and then a big backlog on the alternative side road as well. So if you're coming in from the Vaal, give yourself plenty of time to get through that and the divert, or alternatively just run up the R82 via Walkerville. That's looking good this morning in towards Joburg. Get you through a lot quicker. Also, major delays on the M1 going north from Soweto through Randburg. There's a crash before Bayers Nordia. And interestingly, a double-lane closure at Malabongwe Drive. So peak hour roadworks never going to work. So very heavy backlogs from 14th Avenue all the way through Malabongwe, and that traffic expected to get heavier. Durban this morning, no lights on the Higginson Highway at Mobeni. If you're coming out of Chatsworth towards the N2, that's a really big and heavy queue. Cape Town, Jan van Riebeeck coming off 35th Avenue to Parow, queuing up to Epping Avenue. Looks like there might be some traffic lights out there. And if you leave Somerset West to Stellenbosch, lights are out all along the R44. The big ones are the Lord Charles Hotel. That's a backlog over the N2. And then Annandale Road still down since the storm. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:08. Good morning, you with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Good to have you along with us this morning. My voice not quite on song, but from 9 o'clock, I suppose, a little bit of rest and relaxation. We'll do it until then. Lemon, honey, bit of coffee, some hot water, all of those things will keep me with you. So anyway, good to have you along this morning. A lot going on, obviously. Various reports from Times Live this morning that the Electoral Commission is, in fact, going to appeal that decision by the Electoral Court to say that former President Jacob Zuma is eligible to actually stand for election to Parliament. It's also, of course, former President Jacob Zuma's birthday today. Also, the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, his birthday too today. So I think a lot of people will be wishing them happy birthday. Also, of course, in the next little while, we'll talk about crime in the Eastern Cape and how it affects schools. Also, NSFAS, big story there. We'll speak to NSFAS and we'll find out more about Joburg trying to switch off people, deal with people who aren't paying their bills. 7:09.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
You may remember a few weeks ago we took a call from a teacher in the Eastern Cape who told us of how scared she was to go to work every day. It's one of those calls that really stayed with me because the school she worked at was being targeted by criminals, and she told us how people really had to sort of leave the school, be very careful at certain times. Well, you can imagine on our WhatsApp group yesterday when we saw this story how important we realized it was, because the Eastern Cape Department of Education has now confirmed that in the last 5 months in Nelson Mandela Bay alone, 131 schools have been robbed. It was just an incredible number. In other words, since November, there have been cases like this in over 100 schools in just one metro. Malibongwe Mtima is the Eastern Cape Department of Education spokesperson. Malibongwe, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
So
Thanks for having me.
No, sure. So for 131 schools to be robbed in one metro in just 5 months, I mean, it's obvious people are targeting your schools. It's incredible.
Yeah, this is nothing, Stephen, compared to the fact that there was I think in one day, 10 schools at some stage were robbed. Hence, the department took this decision to say, let's partner, let's find a way so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to resolve these matters. This included ensuring that, for instance, we invest an amount of about 59 million to ensure that we appoint those that will be looking after the school in the form of security. We put surveillance cameras. We're not doing that on our own. We are working with the law enforcement agencies in this regard, the police. We're working with the community members, the CPF, because at the end of the day, these schools operate in communities. So if we detach, even if we put those, they may not be functional because the community will just back off. So we want to work with them to ensure that this becomes a success.
Do you know if it's sort of one group of gangs or several groups of gangs working together that are doing this, or do you think it's more opportunistic than that?
We believe these are just opportunistic gangs because, remember, it's, for instance, in PE, they were targeting certain areas and certain schools, those schools that are in Quidale 1 up to 3, because they don't do those things in Quidale 4 and 5 schools. So that's why we're saying that. And in most cases, those people will steal phones and they don't take away the machine and or do a huge damage. They just steal those small things when they come into school. But the fact of the matter is that they are not supposed to be there. They make schooling terrible because nobody can function after they've come in to do those things, threatening people with guns and whatnot. For instance, in one school, TE Kwazakere High, they came in 3 times.
Sure. I've been told that the people who do this are actually quite young. I mean, some of the teachers have said these people are young enough to be in school. They're young enough for me to be teaching them.
That's what the educators or the reports that we are getting from districts, that's what people are saying, that these are young people that are doing these things. So we are trying to turn it around. Take those young people, appoint them as security officers in our schools to guard our schools. Number two, we are going to have admin people that are going to be also dealing with this to ensure that when these things are happening, nobody will be left in the cold. For instance, you know that when they are working there, they need to have time sheets, and so we don't want them to struggle. Hence, we said we are going to appoint 1,000 of those security guards as a start. Subsequent to that, we'll also increase it annually. But for this one is for a start, and we're not only going to appoint the security, we're also going to ensure that each and every school has got a surveillance cameras, so that at the end of the day, people that are at school can study or can learn safe.
It's a major failure on the part of the police, and I sort of understand their problem to a point. But if you had one police officer outside each of these schools at closing time, and that one police officer has a radio to call for help, I mean, that would probably end it. It could be that simple.
But beyond that, look at this. Let's assume that the police have not been called. Let's assume we've called the police, but the person slipped out of whoever was looking after or was trying to catch him. The problem sometimes is the society that buys these things. For instance, we have laptops and computers that we have invested in these schools or that we have plowed in these schools to ensure that our schools, despite the fact that in rural areas, which is quintile 1 up to 3, despite the fact that in rural areas, at least everything is equivalent or is in the same standard as any other school. So when they come and steal those things, they don't sell them in town. They sell them here in the society, in the community. So bringing in the community, we want to ensure that even if they manage to steal it maybe in another school, it must not be bought by anyone. Whoever gets it must say, bring it back to the person that who stole it from.
Sure. Malibongwe and Team Up, thank you very much indeed. A spokesperson for the Eastern Cape Department of Education. Just incredible that people are targeting schools in this way. 7:15.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
Higher Education Minister Dr. Bladen Nzimande now officially disbanding the board of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme and taking it into administration. He says he is aware of and deeply disturbed by the fact that it has not been making the payments it was supposed to make to students on time. As you know, the organisation Outer has published a voice recording of the former NSFAS chair, Ernest Khoza, claiming that service providers to NSFAS received contracts after making payments to the SACP. The SACP, of course, has strongly denied these claims. Ishmael Mnisi is the spokesperson for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Ishmael, good morning.
Stephen, good morning to you and to SAFM listeners.
Firstly, NSFAS is still operating, right? The people who are supposed to receive money, the students, they will still get the money. The decision to take NSFAS into administration doesn't affect those payments.
Very correct, Stephen. NSFAS still has management that is working to make sure that all its obligations are met, including the payment of allowances.
So who's now running NSFAS? Will the department appoint an official? I think there's already an acting CEO. Does that person stay in place?
Stephen, the minister will be making further pronouncements regarding the decision that he has taken to terminate the board. We will await that further announcement by the minister and the appointment of the administrator in this regard. However, management of the organization still functions, with the acting CEO still being the person that is at the helm of the administration or management of the organization.
Okay, so there will probably, in the end, be one administrator who's appointed, like we've seen in other sort of government entities in the past.
Well, when an organization is placed under administration, that's what we would expect. But as I'm saying, the minister will further clarify his plans regarding the governance structure of the organization.
Is there any indication that the minister has taken this decision because of claims of corruption? There have been claims made in the past. Has anything emerged in the last few days that may have led the minister to suddenly make this decision now? And you'll know, of course, Ishmael, of the context in which all of this has happened.
Well, Stephen, in the context of what we gather thus far from the decision by the minister, you know that there has been the board chairperson who, Mr. Ernest Khoza, who firstly resigned, and thereafter, the minister made a decision to terminate the board. So at the moment, we don't have substantive reasons except that officially the NSFAS did not have the board chairperson, who plays a very critical role as the governance leader of the board. Now, we know that there has been an acting chair, but substantively, Mr. Khoza was still the chairperson, and this termination of the board by the minister, on the surface, it would have been as a result of the board not having the chair at the helm, substantive chair, but as we are saying, there could be further reasons that the minister will expatiate on what led to his decision. So we'll wait for that. But as we have said, NSFAS is still functioning. We are at the moment dealing with the payments of those institutions which were not part of the April run. NSFAS has made plans to make sure that there is no child or student whose allowances are not paid come end of April.
So the roots of all of this, as you know, Ishmael, you weren't at NSFAS then, you were actually at higher education then, but the roots of all of this lie in a decision, I presume, by the NSFAS board at the time to change the way these payments were made to students and to use these fintech companies to make these payments. I have to say, from, I'm not in the department, but from where I sit, and I don't think I'll be the only one to say this, it looks now that maybe was simply the wrong decision. You might have to go back to the previous system.
Well, Stephen, this is a decision that the board took and the Department of Higher Education and Training supported, that we need to be paying students directly. In principle, Stephen, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the direct payment system. Actually, it is a system that helped us a lot to deal with bogus students, to deal with issues of corruption that also was muted happening at various institutions, and also to make sure that NSFAS becomes accountable for its mandate. Because if NSFAS's mandate is that it must disperse allowances, and it now gets done through institutions as it were before, the accountability there was very minimal on NSFAS, and unfortunately it still had to be accountable even at those instances. But that decision was informed. Surely something did not go right in terms of its implementation, but it doesn't nullify the fact that the principle is still okay, and NSFAS should even look at mechanisms to pursue paying allowances directly to students.
Ishmael Mnisi, thank you very much indeed. More to come, of course, on Sunday. Ishmael is the spokesperson for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. 21 after 7.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
The city of Joburg says people who own houses and businesses will be blacklisted if they've defaulted on their monthly rates for more than 2 months. Joburg says it wants to get around 40 billion rand that it's currently owed by its customers, and like other councils, Joburg's battled to get people to pay for the services that they consume. Inyaniso Jeko is the group finance spokesperson for the city of Joburg. Inyaniso, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
What exactly are you going to do?
We are going to ensure that those who are perpetually defaulting on the payment of their municipal accounts for services rendered are blacklisted. This is to ensure that they do not continue incurring further debt elsewhere while they owe the city of Johannesburg, number one. But number two, it is to ensure that and to remind them that they have a financial obligation to pay for the services that has been supplied to them by the city of Johannesburg. Mind you, Stephen, we supply water, electricity, we collect refuse, and make sure that infrastructure is functional for the purpose of residential and business purposes. The contract is that we will supply services as the city, and that in turn property owners to which services are supplied will then pay for such services. But we have noticed that there are homeowners or property owners who have decided that they are not going to be paying the city. In fact, they've developed a tendency not to pay the city, and they're saying this is wrong because it cannot continue to happen like that. Otherwise, the city will collapse and everybody else will be affected.
Is this going to apply to everyone equally? If you haven't paid for 2 months, you're blacklisted.
Yes, it applies for everybody. Remember, the city becomes in constant communication with its debtors. But if that fails, we then hand over to a team that will ensure that it begins a process. Remember, it's not 61 days, and then after that you find yourself blacklisted. A process will be in place, which will include you being contacted by an agency that is established for this to say, look, you owe the city of Johannesburg this much and all of that. Kindly pay. If you fail to respond to such, then a process begins which will see you being listed as a person who's a default payer.
Okay, so if it applies to everyone equally, government buildings, provincial departments, SOEs, the Gauteng Health Department in Yaniso, what are you going to do about them?
Stephen, we treat everyone as customers of the city. The relationship between the city and a property owner of any kind, residential and business, is that the city supplies services and they in turn pay us. And that is what we'll do to everybody. These are the people we would have engaged before, Stephen, including the Department of Health that you want to make an example of, or any other department or any other building. We would have spoken to them. We would have said, this is your bill. You are supposed to pay this much. Pay up. And they would have refused to pay. They would have ignored our action. So everybody ignores the city's attempts to make them honor their obligation will be blacklisted.
Okay, but in Yaniso, blacklisting the Gauteng Health Department changes nothing, doesn't change anyone who makes the decisions in the Gauteng Health Department. At one point, City Power's Isaac Mangena was literally doing almost a press conference in the corner of some of the two hospitals in the centre of Joburg. They owed between them 30 million rand to the city. I mean, I don't think blacklisting a government department changes anything, and that's the problem.
Blacklisting, Stephen, is not the only action the city is taking. We highlighted this particular action now over and above all other control measures that are in place, which include terminating services, which include removing a meter, which include all other processes. So blacklisting is but just one of the processes we are following. So if you want to make an example about the Gauteng Department of Health, the blacklisting is not the only action that shall have been taken. We shall have interacted with the department and any other department or any other consumer of services supplied by the city. And what is important and must be highlighted to everybody is that it is wrong not to pay for services rendered. It will collapse the city, Stephen, and everybody will be negatively affected. Sure. We should not at all entertain a situation where people think it is fine. It is not correct. The city supplies these services so that the city has got its own creditors. Rainwater and Eskom bill the city of Johannesburg monthly for the supply of bulk services, which in turn the city supplies to its own residents. If that does not happen, if the payment is not received, the city still has an obligation to pay Rainwater, to pay Eskom. And how is the city going to pay if residents are not, property owners are not paying?
So in Yaniso, there's a chain of accountability here, and I completely agree with you. You're not going to get an argument from me on that. I mean, of course you're right, that if people need to pay because people need to pay the city, because the city needs to pay its creditors, they need to pay Eskom, etc. Unfortunately, I've spoken over the years to many people in your position, or saying what you say. The city now is owed 40 billion rand. I remember so clearly Deputy President David Mabuza at the time, I think 3 years ago, saying that people needed to pay. And I don't see anything that's changed. So I don't think, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but I don't think anyone listening to you right now is scared.
The idea is not to instill fear. The idea is to give people an understanding and a constant reminder. Remember, we're in partnership with property owners, and as such, we need to continuously remind them it's the responsibility of the city. Like any creditor, a creditor, Stephen, has a duty to remind its debtors. That's why SAPC reminds its viewers to pay TV licenses all the time. It's because reminding your debtors their responsibilities and duties of what they need to do is part of the process. So they may not be scared, but we continue embarking on activities to outline to them the importance of paying for the municipal services to avoid total collapse of the city, something which anybody should not look to. So yes, they will not be scared, but they will at least know that an action will be taken. And tomorrow, they cannot claim to have not known that there are such actions that can be taken if they do not pay. For instance, they go to a bank asking for a loan. A bank tells them that, we're not going to give you money because you owe the city of Johannesburg. The city says you're not paying. They can't come back to the city and say, I did not know that if I don't pay you, I won't be able to ask for a loan, I won't be able to buy a car, I won't be able to buy a house. They need to know that these things are now intertwined as financial obligations that they must honor.
Inyaniso Jacob, thank you. The Group Finance spokesperson for the city of Joburg, 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Quarterfinals.
Big day for football. Stellenbosch FC, they know how important this clash against Supersport United will be. Now, fresh off their victory in the Carling Knockout Cup, Stellies are setting their sight on further triumphs, pushing past last season's semi-final barrier as they prepare to take to the field tomorrow at Dani Craven Stadium. They know the stakes are high with an unbeaten streak spanning 20 matches. They'll put the pressure on forward Devon Titus, who remains a key player for Stellies. More soccer news. The father of slain Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Fleurs, Theo, he's welcomed the arrest of 6 suspects believed to have been behind the 24-year-old's hijacking and killing last week. The South African Police Service confirmed that 6 suspects, some of whom had previously been arrested for similar cases, were arrested earlier this week. Fleur's father, speaking after the memorial service at FNB Stadium yesterday, said the arrests have brought some relief to the family.
Thank you very much for each and everybody, for the prayers, and also for SAP for moving out so swiftly in getting his perpetrators. And I can't wait to go see them tomorrow. Definitely want to see who is the people who were involved in taking my son away from us all, and not just to us as a Villiers family and friends, but to the whole of South Africa and abroad.
On to swimming, and Peter Coetzee blasting his way on the 4th day at the National Championships in Gqeberha. He won his 4th title, producing yet another Olympic qualifying time in the men's 100-metre backstroke final. Golf Royal Johannesburg and Kensington Golf Club, Dylan O'Leary takes a slim lead into the final round of the Altron Big Easy Tour playoff, thanks to his second round of 68, and it's taking place at the Irene Country Club. Meanwhile, Bryson DeChambeau holds a one-shot lead at 7 under par as play was suspended due to bad light in the opening round of the Masters at Augusta. The American opened the day with a string of birdies in the first 3 holes before eventually signing for a near-flawless 65. The world number 1, Scottie Scheffler, followed him into the clubhouse with a 66, while Nicola Højgaard's late charges sees him outright third on 5 under with 3 holes remaining on day 2. Here's Bryson DeChambeau.
Well, it's always great getting off to a hot start. 3 under, your first 3 holes kind of get you settled. I knew it was going to be a tough day today with the wind and even tomorrow. So a lot of patience is required around this golf course, and making sure you're just stroking it on your line, putting it good, hitting good iron shots, and driving it well. I mean, in order to win major championships, you've got to, especially out here, you've got to do everything well.
That's a wrap of your Sport and Sunrise. More top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. A lot more to come in the next half an hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Day 16 of No Load Shedding, 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, Johannesburg City Power has confirmed one of its contractors has been arrested for allegedly reconnecting electricity to a property that owes the power utility 3.8 million rand in arrears. The remains of 6 of the 45 people who were killed in a bus crash in Limpopo at the Easter weekend will today be handed to the families in Mukopane for repatriation to Botswana. And an international aid agency has found acute malnourishment to be so widespread in Sudan that it reaches double the threshold for a nutrition emergency. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, some good news from Joburg. The roadworks on the M1 North at Malabongwe, that double lane closure have been lifted, so there's a backlog of traffic still to clear through from 14th Avenue up towards the Winnie Mandela off-ramp. And the problem now is the lights are down on Winnie Mandela and Sloane. So coming out of four ways, Winnie Mandela across the M1 bridge down towards Sloane Street is very heavy, and that's just going to prevent that free flow of traffic off the N1 highway. Every time those lights go down, it has almost an immediate impact on traffic flow coming off the highway, so it is going to stay busy for some time. Also, if you're on your way to Four Ways from North Riding, a crash on Witkoppen Road up in the Johannesburg North area, so from North Riding, that's quite slow today. The N1 northbound, a crash near the Braakfontein interchange, just past the old Joburg exit. If you're on your way to Pretoria, factor in some heavy queuing pressure into that scene. Durban, no lights, Higginson Highway at Mobeni. If you're leaving Chatsworth, there's a long queue out towards the N2 highway this morning. The N2 off the south coast, generally okay if you're running in towards Durban this morning. Cape Town, a lot of pressure already on the elevated freeway. Two of the world's largest ocean liners are docked side by side in the harbour, and that's just going to cause onlooking all day long today. The N7 north, that's a heavy queue getting out of Goodwood up towards the Bosmansdam exit, and no traffic lights near the Lord Charles Hotel. So coming out of Somerset West, R44 Broadway Boulevard is backlogging all the way into Strand area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
With Intaling, Intaling, morning again, Asian markets, US futures, how's it all looking?
Well, initially we saw Asian markets in the green, but things have changed with most indexes in the red. Hong Kong's Hang Seng losing 1.4% and the Asia Dow down 0.38%. Now, there seems to be some growing caution on that end as investors await trade data out from China. Over in Wall Street, US futures are in the green, tracking yesterday's upbeat mood. Traders are also looking out for earnings reports from US banks. We've got JP Morgan and Wells Fargo set to kick off the first quarter earnings season today. Back at home, sentiment pretty sour as the JSE ended Thursday in the red. But it'll be interesting to see whether the positive sentiment we've been seeing playing out in the US will filter through to the local bourse today.
And then mining production rises by nearly 10% in February. That's a surprise.
Right, the mining sector has been faring pretty well. During February, production increased 9.9% on an annual basis and 5% month on month. The jump was mainly boosted by an increase in output in iron ore, coal, and chrome. Now, Stephen, was also starting to see the benefits of less disruptive stages of load shedding playing out. But despite the upbeat print, economists have warned that the uptick in production is nothing to be too excited about, as it is from a low base, and they've also highlighted that it could be difficult to sustain the momentum. In a note, Investec economist Laura Holds expanded on these challenges, highlighting the water infrastructure issues that the country is currently dealing with, as well as the poor state of roads and railways, which could continue to weigh on activity as well as export potential.
And then, factory activity also up by 4%. All of this, there's a sort of case for optimism that's beginning to grow.
Right, there is some sort of optimism growing, but it is quite limited. The manufacturing sector, or that data from that side, was a bit of a mixed bag. In February, as you mentioned, activity rose 4.1% year on year, but on a month-on-month basis, we saw a decline of 0.3%. Industries such as wood products, food and beverages, as well as chemical products, were at the forefront of the annual expansion. And just like mining, economists have raised concerns, saying that the momentum may not be sustained. Oxford economics economist Yeha van der Linde, said manufacturing and mining's contribution to GDP in the first quarter of the year would probably be mixed and insubstantial from a growth perspective, and that much will depend on the numbers for March. So we'll be sitting tight, awaiting those prints for further direction.
And Taoleng Lechelap, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Back, of course, on Monday. More business news through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
By the way, a good moment for you also to call that number and book your spot with Mdu and Stanza for your mediated conversation. What happened to you during the week? Your story of the week from 8:30. You might want to book your slot for that. In the meantime, Fred on the line from Joburg. There's a bid by the city of Joburg to blacklist people who don't pay. Fred, how do you see it?
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
You know, Stephen, it's very true that people should pay services. But it's not true that the city of Joburg should do as they please. This amounts to provocation of the communities. You know, how many times do you hear people complaining about water and services that the city has
all the time, yeah.
Yeah, so if really somebody just wake up and decide to blacklist people don't live for city of Johannesburg only. They have got other sources that they want. And if really you want to basically blacklist people, you're coming up with something that is a fight. And we really don't understand as to what kind of a law will they be practicing, because for one to be blacklisted, there should have been an agreement that one have signed. So I don't understand when they say they will be blacklisting people, whether it's a threat or whether they want to provoke the interest or the rights of the citizens or what. They must just have a proper way of collecting revenue from people, other than to put provocation statements to the entirety of the inhabitants of Johannesburg. We don't want a situation whereby people are provoked. We want a situation whereby things flows very easily. We understand the fact that they are owed, but they must come up with a strategy of collecting such revenue from people, not to provoke people.
Yeah, no, Fred, absolutely. I mean, it's also about just managing it properly. You shouldn't run up debt in the first place, and the city should make sure that doesn't happen. And this problem in Joburg goes back years.
You know, Stephen, the city of Joburg, if really they come with such type of a statement, it's a proof to say they are failing. And they don't have other odds or other avenues to can collect revenue from people. And their failure should not be a baby to the entirety of the inhabitants.
Yeah.
They must come up with a strategy. People doesn't want to just relax or sit without paying. They know we've got a duty to pay. But the problem is, what is it that you're paying?
Sure.
They've got Vatopile principle. They've got value for money. How do we value our money paying the kind of service that we're not receiving?
Fred on the line from Johannesburg. Yeah, important point. Thank you. Spoo on the line from Durban. Nesfas. Spoo, talk loudly, please.
Stephen, good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
Stephen, mine is slightly different.
Yeah.
My issue with NSFAS is either NSFAS or the institutions are taking us for a ride. You know, my daughter we applied for NSFAS last year, and for the entire year, when you check on the application, it kept saying that it was pending.
Yeah.
Only to find at the beginning of this year that she was approved. She was approved and monies were paid to the institution. But what makes matters worse, Stephen, is that this year I paid for registration and she's still not registered because the institution could not approve me in terms of my income for the acknowledgement of debt. Now, we're talking about the debt that NSFAS has paid to the institution. As a result, I'm actually making arrangements to bring her back from HR.
Sure.
Because they can't be sitting there when the institution refused to register her. Yes, the money is not paid, and there's proof that money is not paid.
So NSFAS had approved her, but no one, basically the process hadn't worked, and as a result you had to pay.
Yes.
Sure.
They're demanding that we pay something that was already paid. And how I find this out, it's because I've been paying the institution, for the past, for the 2 years before last, I was paying cash, paying both tuition and the accommodation.
Yeah, geez.
Only last year, when things were difficult, we decided that, let us seek help from NSFAS.
Yeah.
Now, the accommodation part of it has been paid, and those people claimed money, and they stopped the debit order that we were paying because obviously they got the money. Now, that is last year. Now, how is it that the institution can now refuse to register my daughter for the final year, and because I cannot afford to pay something that has already been paid?
Spool, that's a very strange story. All right, there's a big noise behind you. You're obviously moving around at the moment. Spool, that's a very strange story, and it just shows you sort of some of the problems, I think, that we're seeing at the moment. All right, Spool, I'm sorry to hear that. Very frustrating. Thank you. Sianda in Nelson Mandela Bay. Crime there, Sianda, these attacks on these schools.
Morning, Stephen.
Go for
it. It's not only in the schools, Stephen. Crime is everywhere. Schools now, they are becoming the thing of the day. Not so long ago, it was churches. And all of these, I heard you using the word that these are young people. These are children, Stephen, around 16, 17, that are doing these things. It's children, and it's well known. The police do not want to do anything. As a private citizen, information is readily available that one of these things originates from the prison. The people who are handling these kids are in prison, serving time. They are using them. They use this protection money for the foreign owned shops. And once a person robs them, they send these little children to kill people, Stephen.
Sure.
There are these transport, Stephen, little cars that are being used as transportation that moves you from one place to another. People are paying. It's called jikelezas. They are driving those cars, Stephen. People are terrified. They stop in the middle of the road and they would chat in the middle of the road. People would say nothing because they know that people would be shot by these little children. And the police are not doing anything about it. It's readily available information in crime intelligence. They should be ahead of these things, but they are doing nothing, Stephen.
Sure. And Sianda, where are the guns coming from? That's the scary thing, right?
That's the thing. We always ask ourselves. And that's one of the things that they do is, if they know that you have a legal firearm, they go into your house.
Yeah.
They go into your house and rob you of your firearm. They rob the police officers. These guns are readily available. Where they get them from, I don't know. Literally every second day or days even, people get shot.
Sianda in Nelson Mandela Bay, it just shows you, it's sort of breathtaking in a way, isn't it? In a moment, we'll speak to the mayor of the Ngcuba Yatemba municipality. Strong comments from her in the last few days, 7:45.
Wake up to the stories that warm your heart and ignite your spirit every morning on Expresso. Do you know a young hero making waves in your community? We want to hear from you. Share their inspiring stories with us on our WhatsApp line 063-408-8863, and let's celebrate their achievements together. And here's the best part. You could join us live in studio to tell your story. Expresso Morning Show every weekday morning at 6 to 9 a.m. only on S3.
Join Smile Foundation for a movie night under the stars featuring Sing 2 on Saturday, 20th of April at Old Ed Sports Grounds. To book, visit smilefoundationsa.org. This is an SABC supported initiative.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Well, there's been a report in the Herald newspaper this week talking about the situation in Ngcuba Yatemba, home, of course, of the Cradock 4 who were assassinated by the apartheid government in the 1980s, and just talking about the state of the town. In fact, a sort of quote from the mayor there, the ANC's Nonqedo Zonke, that the situation is so bad, only the army could actually bring it under control. Well, the mayor of Nkhubeya Themba, Nonqedo Zonke, is on the line now. Madam Mayor, good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How would you describe the situation in your town? I mean, from the reports that I see, it's a very difficult situation. You have a lot of vandalism, for example.
Thank you for having me in your radio station. Sir, the situation at Nkhubeya Themba with regards to service delivery matters, whether you are talking on issues of cleaning our environment, and also the network of our roads is becoming better. Hence, now we have entered into the space of competition of the environmental department with energy technologies, so that we can be able to get into that competition, which is making the municipality in the past 2 years to be number one municipality, especially the small municipality competitions in terms of cleaning and greening our municipalities. And on roads, we have managed to put aside our own internal funding so that we can be able to do our network in town of Craddock and town of Middleburg. Because you must remember that we have these trucks that are coming from Kuruman to Gqeberha that are getting to our access roads. But with regards to issue, which is a challenge, it's an issue of vandalism by community on their assets. Remember, these assets belong to community, and if our communities are not changing their mindset in terms of vandalizing their own properties, it's becoming a nightmare. They started with sport fields. Currently, we have been assisted by Department of Sports, Arts and Culture on the sports field in town in Craddock. That is a provincial asset in terms of athletics. They were vandalizing cables, vandalizing infrastructure in that sport field. But it is now currently under construction with the help of DISRAC. But there are other sport fields like in Middleburg, Mara Stadium. The same communities are dealing with their communities, vandalizing them. So we have approached a Department of Sandaf so that they can be able to assist us, because we do have some soldiers in our own area that are underutilized, and we are saying they can be of assistance. But also under NARISEC project, we have approached the Department of Agriculture and Land Reform, Rural Development, so that the young people in our space who are unemployed can then be tasked with a situation of looking after these assets and make sure that there's maintenance on them. There's also a watching of these facilities. You must remember in the past that these facilities were not guarded, and the community was responsible to guard their own facilities. They were not vandalized. They were keeping them as treasures because some of them are heritage sites. So, yes, there is a challenge of communities vandalizing their own assets. And we are doing awareness campaigns to them to say they must try and make sure that they talk against this because it's becoming a pandemic now.
Madam Mayor, I mean, one of the ways to protect community assets like sports fields or swimming pools is to make sure that they are being used so much that no one can vandalize them. Are these facilities being used? If you get them to a point where they're being used, if you've got a sports field that's being used by, a group of footballers,
and you are correct,
a group of people here, then, I mean, no one's going to vandalize it if they're used properly.
We are correct on that one. As Nkhubeya Themba, we make sure that we have all tournaments. During the Easter tournament, 4 days were on our sport fields with young people. 4 days. An intense, a comprehensive developmental approach on the sport. There was a Easter tournament that was initiated by us as a municipality to all our sporting clubs. As a result, NPA during this Easter weekend has written a statement to us to say, after Easter, they usually have 20 to 30 new cases that involves young people mostly. But during this Easter, it was only 4 cases, and they do not involve young people. It's people that are selling drugs to communities. And they were thanking us because we started last year with Mayor's Cup, District Mayor's Cup, Provincial Premier's Cup, and then we came to say every holiday that is posing danger to our communities, let us be on the sport field. So they are using them, and you must know that Kredok and Middleburg is known of sport. We've got players that are playing in the rugby Springbok. We've got players that are playing nationally. Whether you talk netball, our netball team was in Cape Town. It came back number 1. So on issue of sport, no one can tell us, because that's where we excel. We make sure that we play in these sport fields.
Madam
But there are other people who are having other ulterior motives, which then do not have a respect for these facilities in our clubs. They will go and vandalize cables, and we are saying that is a sabotage. We don't think that is not having a network on its own. We believe that there's a sabotage of people who want to vandalize purposely our facilities.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much indeed. Noncedo Zonke is the Mayor of the Nkuba Yatemba municipality from the ANC. 7-minute state.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Your way to Pretoria. There's a crash just before the Brockfontein interchange. A couple of lanes are closed and traffic's backing up towards Samrand Road pretty quickly. It's a heavy queue. Pretoria bound. No lights on William Mandela and Sloane. So William Mandela across the highway is heavy, and that is preventing free flow coming off the highway. The N1 north and southbound backed up into the exits there. Off the highway, it's all very heavily congested. And a crash just after Galuli's on the N3 north, starting to back things up into the Edenvale area. Quite a big crash at Sadara on your way to Durban. Multiple lanes are closed. This sounds like a bad one. If you're coming from Howick and you're travelling down to Pietermaritzburg, expect some queues. Getting back towards Maryvale, that backlog. I just got an update here. 3 lanes on the N3 Durban bound at Sadara are currently closed. That's a big deal. Cape Town this morning. Robert Sobukwe on your way up to Bellville, a crash near Castleflay. That's causing a lot of delay on Symphony Way that comes up from Delft and Belhar into Robert Sobukwe. Big traffic out that way. Jan van Riebeek Drive in Parow, very heavy around Epping Avenue. Looks like the lights are probably down at that junction. It's busy both ways. And a major delay coming out of Somerset West. No traffic lights on the R44 Broadway Boulevard at Main Road. That's the Lord Charles Hotel junction. That traffic on Broadway Boulevard heading out of Somerset West towards Stellenbosch direction starts to queue back deep in the Strand area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Agenda setting conversations of the day.
Well, you know the number to dial, 5 minutes to 8, of course, it's 086 000 2032. There have been some interesting developments around CIFSA, of course, the employer association in the steels and engineering sector. They, CIFSA and unions, are calling for government to now have a metals and engineering industries reconstruction, reindustrialization and development plan. In other words, I think they're basically asking government to sort of, make proper plans for the industry. Lucia Trentini is the Chief Executive Officer of CIFSA. Lucia, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
What exactly are you calling for here?
Okay, so we're in the middle of our tri-annual wage negotiations. Our current 3-year deal lapses on the 30th of June this year. And we think that the time is ripe for us to settle the vexed issue of wages as quickly as possible. And as a sector, as an industry, to sit down with organised labour and organised business and develop a industrial policy for our sector. Our sector is quite a big sector. It contributes about 15% to the country's overall GDP, and our share of that contribution is 17%. So 17% or 15% is quite a big chunk. There are 9,000 companies in the sector employing 230,000 workers, and we haven't had since 2007 an industrial policy that has reindustrialized the sector. And as part of this year's negotiations, what we want to do is set aside wages, settle that quickly. We've been talking about wages since October last year. We concluded a relationship agreement in January this year. We had our first meeting on Wednesday this week, and the culmination of all those efforts has resulted in getting us very close to the deadline date that we set for ourselves to conclude an agreement, namely the 8th of May. And we might even be able to settle sooner than that, so that we can sit down as a sector and develop a roadmap that takes this industry forward and begins to deal with the underlying constraints preventing growth, job creation, and a reindustrialization of the sector.
What kind of measures then would you need to see? And somewhere along the line, Lucio, I'm sure there'll be a conversation around steel tariffs for steel coming and steel products coming into the country.
Yeah, the issue of steel is obviously going to feature centrally in those discussions. I mean, our industry represents the upstream manufacturers, the primary steel producers, everything in between, including the mom and pop workshops in Boksburg and the East Rand and outlying areas. So we need to develop a policy that addresses everyone's concerns. We do see so, although we represent the majority of employees employed by employees in the sector, we do negotiate with the trade unions together with our fellow employer organizations, some of which have very strong views in terms of how we deal with the issue of steel. And we are prepared to bring them on board, work with them, work with organized labor. We work with some of the biggest unions in the country, the National Union of Mine Workers, the National Union of Metal Workers, Solidarity, and so on. And we think that if we can all find common cause, I think that we can put this industry on a trajectory to reindustrialize and begin tackling the issues that can lead to a better outcome than the outcome that we've been experiencing since 2007.
Are you expecting... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, sorry for interrupting.
Are you expecting, the minister, I presume Ibrahim Patel in this case, to sort of, get actively involved in this? And again, his sort of role in this has sometimes been quite closely questioned.
Yeah, look, everyone knows that there's a general election on the horizon, and hence our urgency and our haste to try and settle our industry negotiations by the 8th of May. And we'll have to wait and see what the political landscape looks like after 29th of May. And you have written extensively on what the political landscape might look like after the 29th of May. If Minister Patel is still in the chair, come the compilation of the new cabinet, then we'll definitely be approaching him. He's currently the Minister of the DTRC, and he has a central role in partnering with us in terms of developing a policy for this industry. This industry sits in the middle of our economy. We're a supplier and a customer to all the major sectors around us. Whether you talk mining, manufacturing, agro-processing, automotive assembly, automotive building, automotive component manufacturing and the like, we are smack in the center of all that. And if we grow, a rising tide lifts all ships.
Lucio, thank you very much indeed. Lucio Trentini is the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of Southern Africa's Chief Executive Officer, also Chief Negotiator in those talks. You are there, SAFM. Don't forget your story of the week from 8:30. Call now, book your spot. Leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, a city power contractor arrested and warning of a severe hunger crisis in Sudan. Good morning. Johannesburg City Power has confirmed one of its contractors has been arrested for allegedly reconnecting electricity to a property that owes the power utility 3.8 million rand in arrears. City Power says it handed the contractor to the Booysens Police, where he was charged with bribery and tampering with essential infrastructure. The bribery charge relates to the contractor's alleged involvement in the unlawful electricity reconnection in two other cases. City Power has put internal controls in place, which it says are proving effective. The remains of 6 of the 45 people who were killed in a bus crash in Limpopo at the Easter weekend will today be handed to their families in Mukupane for repatriation to Botswana. Health authorities say the remains have been positively identified. Yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Botswana counterpart, Mokgweetsi Masisi, visited the crash site. The bus was transporting people from Botswana to an Easter pilgrimage at the St. Engena's Zion Christian Church in Moria, when the bus lost control and plunged down a bridge on a mountain pass. The South African Health Department spokesperson Neil Shikwambana says the process of identifying the remains is continuing.
The process of receiving the loved ones happens at the backdrop of the visit by the two excellencies from the two countries, that is President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa and also His Excellency President Eric Masisi of Botswana, who visited the scene of the accident and also committed to the families and also the whole people of Botswana and South Africa that the process of scientifically identifying the remaining victims will be fast-tracked.
The South African Students' Congress, SASCO, has welcomed the Higher Education Minister, Blade Nzimande's decision to dissolve the board of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. SASCO President Vizinhlanhla Simelane has described the dissolution of the board as victory for South African students who depend on NSFAS funding. Simelane says SASCO will join this morning's march to NSFAS offices against the Higher Education Department's continuation to pay allowances through service providers whose contracts have been found to be invalid.
You'll understand that there are issues even today when it's come to distribution of allowances to students. As we speak, SASCO Gauteng and SASCO Western Cape will be having a march to department to NSFAS board to demand the smooth process of payment of allowances, to demand the removal of Izaka and the 4 fintech companies that were appointed by the board of NSFAS, the one that has been dissolved. So the dissolution of the board, I think it's the right step towards the correct direction.
Understaffing, limited resources and low salaries are some of the challenges public servants in the Free State say they deal with. They say the challenges are affecting their efforts to contribute to the improvement of government's delivery of basic services. The public servants engaged with the Public Service and Administration Minister, Noxolo Kivit, during an imbizo in Bloemfontein yesterday. Some say the problems are compromising their professionalism.
We are so crowded in our office. We are almost 10 officials in a space that can occupy, if it's max, there has to be 4.
Get the political will to start with. And then secondly, the system itself is frustrating. And above them all, there is no accountability. And as the public service was said, we've lost integrity.
And finally, an international aid agency has found acute malnourishment to be so widespread in Sudan that it reaches double the threshold for a nutrition emergency. Doctors Without Borders is warning of a hunger crisis much worse than feared. The BBC's Barbara Platt-Usher reports.
At least one child dies every 2 hours in the Zamzam camp for displaced people, according to Doctors Without Borders. It has just completed a mass screening of mothers and children under 5 and found 1/3 of them to be acutely malnourished. Sudan's conflict has displaced millions of people, ruined the economy, and blocked aid to vulnerable populations. Humanitarian workers say it will not be possible to turn the tide on this catastrophe unless there is a surge of food supplies and much greater access to deliver it.
Recapping the top story, Johannesburg City Power has confirmed one of its contractors has been arrested for allegedly reconnecting electricity to a property that owes the power utility 3.8 million rand in arrears. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. We have rugby. The Bulls forward Nizam Kar has set his sights on making history in the Champions Cup quarterfinals. And in golf, Eric van Rooyen emerges as the top-placed South African at the Masters. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Reminder, heavy traffic coming off the N1 north and south at Winnie Mandela. The lights are down again this morning, Winnie Mandela and Sloane. So because Winnie Mandela across the highway coming out of Four Ways is so backed up, you just can't get that free flow off the highway. So south from Rivonia, north from Malabongwe, it's all heavily backed. A crash on the N3 north at Linksfield, delays getting up through Galulis, and quite a big crash on your way to Pretoria this morning, the M1 north before Brockfontein. That's pushing a heavy queue back towards the Samrand Road exit. This is a major crash from KZN. It's on the N3. It is Durban bound between Sadara and Hilton. Now, there is an ambulance involved in this, and that ambulance is being completely destroyed in this truck crash. Multiple lanes are closed, and given the fact that it is an ambulance, it will be restricted for some time. So if you're due to come out of Howick or move through Howick on your way to Durban, you might want to think about getting onto the old road as quick as you can. You could come back on at Hilton, or you could just stay on the old road and go straight through to Pietermaritzburg. But avoid the N3 basically between Maryvale and Hilton. That is going to be an issue for some time this morning. Cape Town, no traffic lights on the R44. That's Broadway Boulevard at Main Road, Lord Charles Hotel. It's a big queue out of Strand side this morning, making your way up and over the N2. And the N7 North is a heavy backlog. You won't be expecting it to be that heavy, but it certainly is from Fort Trekker Road in Goodwood all the way through to the Bosmansdam Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes as well. Sansa's been what we call banging the phones. In other words, phoning people to see if he's able to make something happen. And it looks like we'll actually be able to speak to the new mayor of Ekurhuleni in just a moment. And Kusipendile Kakaza in a few moments. So important to hear from him from the ANC. Your calls as well, please, on 086 000 2032. Other conversations to come. We'll talk about climate change after these huge floods that we've had. And, of course, from 8:30, your story of the week. What for you is the most important thing to happen this week? The most important thing to happen to me? I've got to go and find my voice. 8 after 8.
2 kitchens, 2 home cooks, 2 chefs, a mystery bag of ingredients, 20 minutes, and 1 Mushe Ndiki. Put them all together and you have created Ready Steady Cook South Africa. Tune in weekdays to see 2 new faces battle it out in the kitchen with the help of some of South Africa's most iconic chefs, with Mushe bringing his wit and charisma to the Ready Steady Cook kitchen. Channel your inner 5-star chef on Ready Steady Cook South Africa. Starts Monday the 18th of March at 7 p.m. only on.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. Will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The boys of Steve Barker resist to leave the pitch without a ticket to the semis. But there's a big problem. Kevin Hunt's boys say the last dance of happiness belongs to them. This is the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal battle. Stellies versus Matsatsansa Pitori on Saturday, 13 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
10 minutes after 8. Well, after 2 weeks without a mayor, the Metro of Ekurhuleni in Gauteng finally has a new mayor. The ANC's and Kusipendile Kakaza was elected unopposed, the only person nominated yesterday. As you know, in Ekurhuleni, there's been the sort of informal working arrangement between the ANC and the EFF. And, of course, what happened in the past was that there was a mayor from the AIC. This time, there's actually now a mayor from the ANC which is interesting. Also, the fact that there was no opposition meant that no one from the EFF had to vote for the mayor. So there's all sorts of things going on in the background. Well, let's hear from the new mayor of Ekurhuleni in Kosinpendile Kakaza. Mr. Mayor, good morning. How are you feeling this morning after yesterday?
No, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity. Yes, we wake up today with a renewed hope, with confidence, and everybody is looking forward to a great future in the city of Ekurhuleni.
What's going to be your priority? What are the things you think you need to sort of get going with immediately?
Well, I mean, immediately for now is that we must put up a team, look at finalizing the various consultations, and be able to put up a team. Of course, we must draw courage from yesterday's council meeting. Electing me unopposed, I'm quite grateful. And honored really by council and the people of Ekurhuleni for giving me, this responsibility. I think in the main, we have to ensure that we quickly put up a team, we consolidate the unity and stability of Ekurhuleni. We need to come up, with a program for our people to deliver services. We need to, have a state of the cities address where we really have to articulate what is our program to fast track, the provision of basic services. What are we promising our people in the area of energy, water provision, how they keep the city clean, roads, but importantly, governance issues. What is our, articulation there, areas of finances. So yeah, and of course, what is the developmental program that we already will be driving, and we are hoping that the experiences of the last two years, in a couple of months, as we enter the mid-term, for this term, that into the remaining 2.5, we will have a stable government, that we're not going to have changes. And of course, for us to do that is to be able to consolidate from what happened yesterday and be able to take the program forward. We're confident, really, that we will see stability for the remaining part of the term.
So, I mean, a big part of this is obviously, and let me sort of get blunt here, to your relationship as the ANC with the economic freedom fighters. And Mr. Mayor, I mean, I always think with coalitions like this, it must be quite difficult because you make the appointments as the member of the mayoral committee, and you must have so many people sort of looking over your shoulder, because you'll have, I'm sure the Gauteng ANC leadership, Panyaza Lesufi, the premier, but the chair of the ANC, he'll want to be involved. There'll be negotiations with the EFF. You'll also have your local caucus, the Ekurhuleni ANC caucus. Some of them, I remember Jongazizwe Tlabati, very critical of the relationship with the EFF at one point. So all of that's quite tricky. I don't envy you, I must just say. When do you think you'll be able to make your MMC appointments?
Well, according to our plans, is that we should be able to finalize by today, so that by beginning of next week we've got a team, so that we can really focus on getting, the necessary oversight across all functions, across all departments in Ekurhuleni. Of course, there is the party. There are, other parties. But as I've said it, I mean, we really get courage, from what happened in council, that you get all the parties, to really, others by decided not to act, by deciding not to field the candidate, others through agreements. We'll have to put all those plans into place. But what is a center of everything else is that everybody is committed to stability. We really have to put up a system that is responsive to the multi-party, what do you call it, the multi-party sort of a framework, so that we're really able to build forward, come up with a common program, and ensure that we service our people.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't expect you to be able to say very much, so I know it's difficult. But thank you for letting us hear your voice. At least we know now how the new mayor of Ekurhuleni sounds, and I'm sure you're going to have a very busy day today.
Yeah, it's been busy. Of course, I mean, I've been around. I've been with Ekurhuleni now since 2011. Sure. I've been a member of the mayoral committee since 2014. I've looked after, under Mayor Monzi, I was looking after, fortunately given a response to look after water and energy, and Moya Masina, I was given the responsibility to look after finance and economic development. And we think a combination of those experiences and exposures will go a long way, really, in ensuring that we lead a team. We do give oversight to administration. We get everybody to focus, and our people that they would enjoy an impactful delivery of services.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much indeed. Nkosent Pendile Kakaza is the new mayor for the ANC for Ekurhuleni, 17 after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
This is a good moment to book your spots, by the way, for your story of the week from 8:30 this morning. Might well be the new mayor of Ekurhuleni, might well be the big storms we've had in Cape Town, might well be that decision by the Electoral Court on former President Jacob Zuma. Whatever it is, your story of the week, book your spot now on 086 000 2032.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Well, it's been a big week in terms of weather, and I'm talking, of course, about the flooding that we've seen, or the intense storms and the incredibly strong winds we've seen in Cape Town. Don't forget, of course, the heavy flooding that we saw in Durban and KwaZulu-Natal and the Ladysmith area. Twice one area there was flooded over the Christmas period. 350africa.org are now calling for what they call decisive climate action. Glenn Tyler Davies is the team leader for 350africa.org. Glenn, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
You say that there needs to be urgent action. What kind of action do we need to have? We can see the weather's changing. We had a very intense heat wave in Gauteng and then suddenly very intense rain. What kind of action do you think we need to take now?
So I think we're seeing more and more of these extreme weather events, Stephen, and the scientists are telling us that this is as a result of climate change. And climate change is primarily a result of our burning of fossil fuels, of coal, oil, and gas. So I think we need to make sure that we're reducing the fossil fuels that we are burning. And there are a number of ways to do that. We can all take personal action, of course. You can also support local organizations such as 350africa.org and others that are working on climate change. But there are also the sort of bigger political movements and processes that are happening that we also need to impact on, particularly the integrated resource plan that was recently out for comment, and it's been seen by many to be woefully insufficient in combating climate change and in moving us quickly to rely on renewable energy and not on fossil fuels.
I mean, it seems in a way that because we've had so many intense weather situations, and I mean, I think the worst was probably the flooding in Durban in 2021. But what we have now is, I think, more and more people understand that this is happening. There seems to be general acceptance of it. The problem now is political leaders making the choices. And the reason these choices are difficult, and I think this is the case in many democracies, not just here, is that they impose a cost on people now to try and help the future. And there's an electoral cycle for politicians to think about.
Absolutely, Stephen. I think that argument is one that we've heard a lot before, that we're going to have to pay a lot now in the fight against climate change in order for some future benefits. Unfortunately, or fortunately maybe, that's no longer true. The fact is that if we are to transition to renewable energy, our electricity supply will be cheaper than it is on fossil fuels. So getting off fossil fuels is a win-win situation. It'll help us in terms of air pollution, in terms of the fight against climate change, and it will also mean we have cheaper electricity supply. And crucially for our continent, it will also be easier to produce electricity in a more decentralized fashion. So get electricity to where people need it. A lot of the fossil fuels that we talk about, and particularly, we hear our government talking about, a lot of these fossil fuels are developed and exploited for export. And what we actually need is energy to use for people in South Africa and in Africa. So I think that's really important. And coming back to your question, it's not about the fact that we're going to pay a lot now because we have to, put in lots of resources and capacity to fight climate change. We're suffering from load shedding. We're suffering from, the high cost of goods and things like that. Moving to renewable energy can actually supply us with energy more cheaply, which will power our economy more cheaply, which means we're able to not only fight climate change, but also decrease the cost of living and make sure that our energy is cheaper as well.
There's certain things that happen in South Africa. I read this week that there's a point, I think it's run by Sasol, that is sort of the single biggest emitter of a certain type of gas, for example, in the world. I was amazed to read that, and I thought that might be questioned. But we also know, for example, that the two new big coal-fired power stations, Kusile and Medupi, are going to be huge polluters. There's a big argument around carbon storage, so storing basically the stuff that comes out of these power stations, all of those technologies. If you look at the state of this argument in South Africa, do you think you're winning or losing?
So I think there are definitely reasons for hope, Stephen. And, some of the things I've already spoken about, just the fact that it's going to be a kind of no-brainer, or what some have called a no-regret solution, moving to renewable energy as quickly as we can. That's really a point of hope. And, the massive rollout we've seen of solar energy recently is really, really encouraging. Unfortunately, a lot of it is done by the private sector and done by people who are rich enough to be able to afford solar systems. And what we'd really like to see is 350 Africa is we'd like to see a capable government rolling out renewable energy generation for people. So energy is essentially a right that we all deserve. And we need to make sure that we are able to have that energy. So I think making sure that government is doing this is really, really important, and supporting civil society who are working to try and make sure this can happen is important. People can go to our website, 350africa.org, to learn about that. There are many partner organizations who are doing incredible work. And it's not only the personal action that people can take, but it's also the bigger political actions. Obviously we have the elections coming up, and that's a great opportunity to learn about what our parties are saying about energy and climate change. But we can also input on process and policies, things like the IRP. And coming back to your question, I think the IRP is unfortunately incredibly bad. But we have the opportunity to comment on these processes, and we also have the right to protest when we think things are going badly.
Then Tyler Davies, thank you very much indeed. We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid. South Africa team leader, 350africa.org.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
Well, a new campaign is trying to bring more awareness to particularly young women around HIV. And we've known for many years in our society that the people who are most vulnerable to HIV are young women, although there's some indications that the prevalence rate is very slowly beginning to come down, or the infection rate rather. It's called the Forever Werner campaign. One of the people behind it is the creative director at Ogilvy Health SA, Charlene Olivier. Charlene, good morning. What exactly are you trying to do with this campaign?
Good morning, Stephen. I'm so thankful to be able to have this discussion with you. It's incredibly important that we open the narrative with South Africa and with young South Africans. What we're trying to do with this campaign is to allow young South Africans to have agency over their choices. So this narrative it's lying dormant for a couple of years now. And while you'll note, we found that the statistics in young women has gone up, there are also statistics that testing has gone down in young men. And this truly means that this is an all-inclusive young South African challenge that we are facing.
I think more people have more access to more information around HIV than ever before. I mean, when I was growing up, the idea of a condom being seen, when I was very young, if you wanted to go and get a condom, you had to go and get it from the pharmacist in the dispensary section. Now they're, absolutely everywhere. You would think as a result of that HIV prevalence would go down. Hasn't quite worked like that. We talk about it more than we've ever talked about it. Do you think that's not working?
The truth is that there are more options available, and we're not necessarily speaking about it as openly as we should. So within homes and within communities, there's still a stigma around HIV. So it's very important with this campaign that we demedicalize the conversation, that we destigmatize the conversation, and that we open it up in order to speak about options, in order for South Africa's youth to have agency over the choices that they have.
A big part of it, of course, is whether young women have the choice to have sex at all, and that's often a big problem.
This is true. And again, it's about allowing each individual. So Forever Winner means choose you. The ambition with the campaign is to internalize the narrative so that each young South African looks at themselves and looks at the options that they have at their disposal, and then are empowered to make a decision and empowered to have a discussion with their partner, or abstain, or ask for consent. We're bringing all of these options to young South Africans and to South Africa in a very positive, constructive narrative, truly.
Charlene Olivier, thank you very much indeed, running the Forever Winner campaign, the creative director at Ogilvy Health SA.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Big moment for the Bulls.
Yeah, big weekend indeed. Nizam Kar and the Bulls charging into Northampton like they mean business. They are set to make history if the Bulls can, be in the Champions Cup quarterfinals if they take on Northampton and win. Now, the Pretoria-based Bulls will be the first South African side to secure a semi-final spot in this prestigious tournament. Kar, having already played for English club Wasps, know that this may not be a free-flowing encounter.
In Kenya or in Africa, we say we don't chase two rabbits at a time. We'll miss all of them.
We're going to have to be a little bit tighter. We can't pass big passes unless it's a miracle pass. So the ball is wet, so you got to sort of change your catching plan and things like that. And if it's windy, your kicking game changes. For example, if you are going to go long, if you are going to go contestable, or you're going to kick it out into the cheap seats. So all those plays a factor.
Let's go to some more news now, and this time it's soccer. It's a big weekend with the Nedbank Cup quarterfinals taking place. University of Pretoria, known as Tuks, they'll be gearing up to challenge with the formidable Mamelodi Sundowns. Kickoff is set for Lucas Masterpieces Moripa Stadium in Pretoria tonight, 7 p.m. Then we've also got action with SuperSport United taking on Stellenbosch FC on Saturday at 3 p.m, followed by AmaZulu against Orlando Pirates at 6 p.m. Wrapping up the weekend, Chippa United will confront TS Galaxy. That's on Sunday. Golf, Eric van Rooyen has emerged as the top South African contender after the first day of the Masters, despite challenging weather at Augusta. With a solid 1 under 71, van Rooyen is tied for 17th, standing shoulder to shoulder with golf giants Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. This is amidst Bryson DeChambeau leading the pack with a 7 under 65, followed closely by world number 1 Scottie Scheffler. Tennis action and the world number 1, Novak Djokovic, came through an uncomfortable match with Italian Lorenzo Musetti winning 7-5, 6-3 to move into the Monte Carlo Masters quarterfinals. He avenged last year's defeat by the same player in the same round in Monte Carlo. And finally, athletics. Kenya's marathon maestro Eliud Kipchoge is setting his sights on a historic achievement at the Paris 2024 Olympics, aiming to clinch an unprecedented third consecutive Olympic marathon gold medal. At 39 years, despite finishing 10th at last month's Tokyo Marathon, Kipchoge remains undeterred. Let's hear from the legendary athlete himself.
In Kenya or in Africa, we say we don't chase 2 rabbits at a time. You'll miss all of them. You chase one. So the rabbit of Olympic Games is what I'm chasing now. After that, I go back to the drawing board, see what's in my bucket list, and start again to chase for the next.
That's how we wrap up Sunrise Sport. We'll have more on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Your story of the week. What for you is the most important thing that's happened this week? 086 000 2032. That's the number 830.
Good morning. We start with breaking news. The Electoral Commission has confirmed it has filed an application in the Constitutional Court to seek leave to appeal the ruling of the Electoral Court in favour of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. The Road Accident Fund is urging claimants who submitted their claims before April 2022 to submit all outstanding documents to the Compensation Fund in order to finalise their claims. And Johannesburg City Power has confirmed one of its contractors has been arrested for allegedly reconnecting electricity to a property that owes the power utility 3.8 million rand in arrears. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Here's a really big deal. The R21 has just been closed just north of the Olifantsfontein exit in Clayville. There's some low-hanging power lines. I can see there's a big backlog of traffic going up from Tembisa and then off-ramping at Olifantsfontein. That's on the Pretoria-bound carriageway. So this incident's up around where that sort of sinkhole and the roadworks are. So north of Olifantsfontein, motorists coming up from the Engen garage, stuck in a queue, and then an off-ramp into Clayville. I don't know whether they've closed the southbound. I can't pick up any sort of disruption southbound, but of course the lines go across the highway, so in all likelihood there may be a restriction southbound as well, but there's some real backlogging going on R21 highway around Clayville this morning. The other big deal that we're watching is a major crash between Howick and Pietermaritzburg. It's on that section between Sadara and Hilton. State ambulance vehicle involved in that, so it is going to take some time to clear up. And that's on top of the fact that it's a very serious collision. So try and off-ramp at Merivale and hit the alternative R103 route. Come back, well, you might as well go all the way down into Pietermaritzburg. It's a pretty open option there, but the N3 is bad and is expected to stay bad for some time. Crash between Dunkeld Road and Reservoir Hills on your way to Durban, largely dealt with and all out of the way. Traffic is starting to move. Cape Town, Somerset West, the R44 Broadway Boulevard at Lord Charles. No lights there, so still a big backlog going north over the N2. N7 stays heavy, Goodwood through to Bosmansdam Road. And the N1 inbound from Century City up over the elevated freeway stays busy. Behind that, there's a crash as well coming in on Marine Drive just before you get to that N1 traffic, so quite heavy as you move through Parton Island. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
South Africa is facing an increase in people diagnosed with non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cancers, hypertension, lung problems and obesity. This also increases the number of people living with these diseases and mental health.
Many people living with these preventable diseases may not be immediately aware unless they go for health screening and testing.
It is our responsibility to invest in our healthier future through regular physical activity, healthy diets and avoiding risky health behaviors such as alcohol and tobacco use.
The Department of Health urges people to go for regular health screening for early detection and effective treatment if they are diagnosed with any of these conditions.
This message is brought to you by the National Department of Health.
Mamelodi Sundowns ladies believe they belong at the top and they want the vital 3 points. But Lindalani ladies are on a mission to shock Banyana Bas style. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns ladies FC versus Lindalani ladies FC. The Sunday 14 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Stephen Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
26 minutes now to 9 the time. All right, your story of the week, 086 000 2032. You heard that confirmation from Anne there, that the Electoral Commission has confirmed it is now appealing the decision of the Electoral Court that allows former President Jacob Zuma to actually stand for a position in Parliament in the elections. I expect some calls will be on that. In fact, Vusi on the line from Springs, you want to talk about Msholozi. Go for it.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, Vusi. How are you? Go for it.
I'm okay, Stephen. Stephen, this boy from Umkhonto Wesizwe, Kanyile, he normally make the reckless public statement when he comments.
Yes, Bonge Nkosi Kanyile, yeah.
Yes. Yesterday I was a bit disappointed about Jacob Zuma when he was addressing his supporters outside the court. When he said to his followers they must all go and vote because the votes are already started. Some people are voting at night. I heard from one of your sister stations yesterday on the news. Because Jacob Zuma, I think they did sign what you call the Code of Conduct of the IEC.
Yes.
When someone sees that the vote are already started, it is not a violation of the Code of Conduct of the IEC, Mr. Grootes?
Oh, Vusi, it may be, actually. I don't know, because he's basically claiming something that cannot be true, isn't he? I mean, it's not true.
Okay,
yeah.
Stephen. But even earlier last month, he also made a reckless statement whereby he was commenting about the LGBTQI community, whereby he says that the constitution or the legislation must be changed because which country have you ever seen a man marries another man? What kind of a comment that he was making if he's a true leader of this country?
Yeah, and I mean, we can show him our country, and there are plenty of others where you see it all the time.
Yes, no, he's making a very dangerous statement to our communities, Jacob Zuma.
All right, Vusi on the line from Springs, thank you. Well, it's interesting to see, and as I say, there was that breaking news a few moments ago, confirmation from the IEC that, in fact, they are going to appeal that decision. Shonasani on the line from Santon High. You want to talk about the blacklisting by the city of Joburg?
Yes, Steve, thanks for taking my call. Look, Steve, I'm for everyone paying for the services, but then the question is, does everyone know what they are paying for? Let's start with water, how you are billed. You are billed, and you're always told you are being billed on a sliding scale that none of the people living from the city of Joburg can explain how that works.
Yeah.
That's one. You can use the same kiloliters for this month and get charged a certain amount. And then come the following month, you use less of the kiloliters, and then you get charged more than what you were charged the previous month. And then when you try and get an explanation, no one actually even understands the kind of calculation that they are using. So why don't you just use, for lack of a better word, a simple then and dirty English in terms of calculations and say you've used so much, 1 liter or 1 kiloliter costs so much. Then you multiply that by whatever you've used so that you can be able to know what you've used. But then they become tricky about it. And yet when they become tricky, they cannot explain it themselves.
Yeah. You know,
and it's not...
Go on.
Yeah. Oh, okay, sorry. Let me go. You can go, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say, I remember, Parks Tau was the mayor of Joburg then, when the billing problems first started. And it's a good lesson in what happens if you don't control what people owe you.
Yes. So people are not paying, some of them, not because they don't want to pay. It's because they don't understand what they are paying for. You cannot pay less on kiloliters this month, and you cannot pay a certain amount on kiloliters this month, and then the following month, your kiloliters become less than of the previous month, and you pay more. And then there's this also attitude that they have, whereby you'll find that you are being billed for something that you don't know, and an exorbitant amount. And then you go into their offices. That has happened to my neighbor. You go into their offices to try and find out what is the story. No one explains. The only thing that you are told is that you pay or we are cutting off.
Yeah, no, and
then you need
that
to
becomes
make
the problem.
arrangements.
Yeah.
Yes, and then here is another problem on top of that. By the time they find out where the problem is, instead of reimbursing you your money, they then take the decision to credit you without consulting you.
Yeah. No, Shonasani, you're absolutely right. There's so much to it, and there's the sort of unequal power between the council and yourself, and I think that lies at the heart of it as well. Shonasani and Santon, thank you. Let's go to Lynn and Kimberley. Lynn, hi. You want to talk about Gaza?
Yes. Good morning, Stephen. Stephen, I was listening to the usual bias tonight in Gina.
Okay.
Yes. He really made it sound as if the IDF had intentionally struck the hostages, which you and I know is nonsense.
I don't think he meant it like that, but anyway, make your point.
Well, yes. Stephen, I'm turn this radio on. Sorry, Stephen.
Okay, Lynn, we'll come back to you in a moment. All right, Lynn, thank you. Let's go to a Gift on the line from the Eastern Cape. Gift, are you our regular Gift?
Yes, Stephen. Now you can hear my voice.
I can, yes.
Look, I wanted to raise two issues, man, quickly. The one on the IEC. Look, I'm quite happy that the IEC is going to appeal a judgment, because I was quite astounded yesterday listening to the former commissioner of the IEC, I think it's Terry Chalane, on television, saying that if it was him, he was going to advise the IEC not to appeal the judgment because they won't win it. And I was not sure whether he's a legal expert or not. But to me, I think that judgment was very unsound, Stephen. And because look, this is an issue that I have raised, that the interpretation of the law is legally mute on this judgment, and it's very concerning, because to me, a sentence is a judgment imposed in a court of law. And this is what I've raised yesterday. And secondly, a sentence might be in the form of prison, fine, or it can be suspended for a period of time. But most importantly, the serving of a sentence does not change the fact that you were sentenced.
Yes. As I understand, so Gift, just two things very quickly. One, a reminder that Gift, of course, is from the ANC, and I'm sure Gift, in a way, you talk. Yeah.
Let me go back to one issue that I think is very serious. And the spokesperson of the Department of Education in the province raised it.
Yeah.
The issue of the escalating crime in Gqeberha. Originally, I'm from Gqeberha, Stephen.
Yes.
And I can confirm to you, really, that it's very concerning, the issue of crime, because schools are being robbed on a daily basis by gangsters. Churches, Stephen, are being robbed. Churches, I'm talking about churches, when congregation is in full session, they get robbed by these gangsters. Ambulances, Stephen, they're getting robbed. But I think I'm happy that the Department of Education has made an intervention allowing allocating plus minus 55 million rand to fight the scourge, because really teachers are living in fear in those schools. Some of them, they even take leave because they're afraid to go to school because these gangsters are on the rampage. But I think we must also appeal to communities that that strong collaboration between community policing forums, street patrols, security volunteers, and the community, and the police must be forged, because we are not going to win that battle in Nelson Mandela Bay if we cannot have this partnership. But most importantly, Stephen, crime intelligence, and this is what we have been raising as a province of the Eastern Cape, that crime intelligence must be beefed up.
Sure.
Police must check up their trade to ensure that they fight the scourge.
Yeah, Gift, we've heard you. Thank you. Gift on the line from the Eastern Cape. All right, Lynn and Kimberley, you've got your radio off. You're back with us. Good morning.
Yes. Sorry about that,
That's
Stephen.
Right.
Stephen, with regards to the leader of Hamas, is it Khania?
Yeah.
I was watching on one of the TV stations. He actually celebrated the death of his children because they are martyred. And his grandchildren, and he was glad that they were in the car, and this has made them heroes. And I just want to quote to you what Golda Meir said many years ago: "Peace will come when the Arabs will love their children more than they hate us."
Yeah.
And that is the bottom line.
All right. Well, look, I'm aware of that quote. Goes back many years, Lynn.
Correct. And it's still applicable.
All right. The view from Lynn and Kimberley. Thank you. As you know, it's a very, very difficult situation playing out there, and there are all sorts of different dynamics to it. John on the line from Pietermaritzburg. Hi.
Hello. How's that?
All right, John, go for it.
All right, man. Stephen, I think after this election, we will have a big challenge now of our lives.
Yeah.
Because if you look recently, I think it's the last vote we had. After that vote, we had a lot of vote of no confidence in the government and all the politicians.
So you think, like we see in the councils, yeah.
I'm telling you now, this coming after the election, we will have this vote of no confidence. Even the president will have, in 5 years, we will have 2 presidents. Because that vote of no confidence will be a main problem now for us. So services to us people, we will have services like me, I'm staying in Northwest. Northwest is a west place to stay there. Now, no service will come to the people because those politicians will look after vote of no confidence. No one or politician will stay at the office for more than 3-4 months.
Yeah.
They will vote him out. So it's no way. So this IEC also story is a waste of time because we know JZ is a big fan of ANC. It's the same. MK, EFF, ANC is the same party. Now,
all right, John in Pietermaritzburg, I think we've heard you. We lost you there, but I think we've heard you. Thank you. Yeah, look, I think that is going to be a big issue. What happens in Parliament after the elections and the sort of confidence votes. Jacob on the line from Imalahleni Witbank. Hi. You want to talk about scams? Go for it.
Well, I think it's more of awareness than a scam, but I think that some of the gynecologists, they are scamming us as the people, especially if you're going to them with medical aid. Stephen, this is what happened. This is my experience and my woman. We went to this gyna, who is a very popular one here in Imalahleni. And then this gyna, as we were attending our month-to-month, at maybe it was around 7 months. 4 months. This gyna said our baby inside my woman's belly is growing something. And he doesn't know what is this thing. It's the first time that he sees this thing. So now you must understand, when you go to a professional and then a professional is saying your baby is growing something that he doesn't know.
It's very scary.
Very scary. Now, we went home devastated, me and my woman, wondering what is it that is growing in our baby and all that. So now, by the grace of God, we decided that we're going to go and consult a different gyna. To our surprise, the gyna on the same building, I have to mention that this is the same, it's a doctor complex, so at the same building, we just decided to go to another one. And then the other one that we attended told us, no, this is there was a bubble inside the belly. So it was nothing harmful. It was completely normal to have a bubble inside the stomach. So now, this one that told us this is something growing, he insisted that we go to see this specialist, and this specialist, they work in cash, and then it's only available in Pretoria. So we called those people, and then when we called them, the first question they ask us is that, did they tell you that we are working in cash? So also that's also a red flag. But now, this is supposed to be nothing, Stephen. Maybe I'm crazy about all that. But now, here's the thing. We are staying at a complex. At the same complex, one of our neighbors is seeing the same guy now that told us that he doesn't know what is the thing growing inside my woman's belly. Now, this guy now told our neighbor that the baby, there's no water in her belly. Which doesn't make sense also. And then after 4 months, he said, oh, okay, no, there is water I can see, but now there is high blood. So we're going to have to proceed a C-section as soon as possible. Mind you, even as he told us that he was actually inquiring on why do we want to give a normal birth instead of C-section.
All right. So, Jacob, are you saying that this guy is consistently doing the same thing?
I believe so. But now my question, it could be more of them, but I just wanted to say, the people who are pregnant and who are listening, please don't especially if you want to give a normal birth, don't be in a hurry to be scared of what the guy is telling you. Do a research or consult a different doctor, because the more time you spend on the hospital, it is beneficial to them. So yes, I'm saying this guy could be possibly scamming people to keep them in hospital for some time.
All right, Jacob and Emila Glenny, thanks very much. All right, yeah, look, I mean, I do think when it comes to this, you need to be very careful. All right, you were there, SFM. It's 11 minutes to 9. Let's get this over with. Hello, Mike and Newlands.
Hello, Stephen.
You'll be so sad one day when I'm nice to you and I'm not rude to you.
I tell you what, I wonder what to do with myself. I want to just bring 2 quick points because I'm scared, Stephen, and this issue might fade away. Mapisa Nkukula, you will know, appointed a guy called Skolani George, offering him a salary of 2.2 million.
George, yes.
Yes, Skolani George, and it went to 4.3, I think it was.
Yes.
So, in other words, he had a salary increase from 183,000 a month, if you can get your head around that, to 350,000 rand a month. He now earns about the same as our president. Now, there was going to be an inquiry into this because Mapisa Nkukula actually lied to us when she said, no, he's only going to get paid 2.2 million. Now, I'm concerned because, I can't keep up with the corruption, as I'm sure all your listeners will agree. It's just impossible. It comes in waves on a daily basis. But we still have the case with Panyaza Laisufi, who he lost 432 million rand when he was MEC of Education. Now, he was found, of course, innocent of this by the Hawks, but let's not forget the fact the Hawks report to the police who reports to the president. So that report doesn't mean anything at all. So I've got those 2 issues bubbling there, Stephen, and I would urge everybody just to stay on this case, but it cannot be that the man that's now the Secretary General of Parliament earns the same as the president, and his first job, which always amuses me, the first major announcement this gentleman made was to say that the parliamentary budget is going to be cut by 986,000 rand. But by the way, he's not taking 1 rand loss. Right. So it just needs to be kept out there and kept alive. And thanks so much for a great show. Cheers.
Mike on the line from Newlands. Been a while. Thank you. 9 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy away from the airport towards Pretoria this morning. It looks like on our systems, the R21 that was closed around Clayville has been reopened, but only with 1 lane. We've also got confirmation from motorists passing that there's 1 lane open. It's some fallen or low-hanging power lines near the sinkhole just north of the Olifants exit. So major delay alert from about the Engen garage on your way through towards the sinkhole lane restrictions. Just everyone filtering into a single lane, and there's a very heavy pressure. A reminder about the big queues if you are Durban bound coming through from Howick this morning. A very serious collision involving a state ambulance between Sadara and Hilton. Multiple lanes are closed and it's a big backlog. You'd want to come off at Merivale and hit the alternative route. Given the fact that a state vehicle is involved, it's likely to be backlogging things in that area for quite some time. And then Cape Town, the N1 into town, stays slow, queuing up from sort of Century City territory, Sable Road territory, all the way to the elevated freeway and into the foreshore area. There are 2 massive ocean liners docked side by side in the harbour. It is quite a spectacle. They're 2 of the biggest ocean liners in the world, the Queen Mary 2 and Queen Victoria. So everybody's having a look at them. That's on the brakes, and that's why the N1 into town is so slow. And just behind that, Marine Drive coming through Pardon Island, a crash before you get to that N1, just causing some inbound delays as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Bonnie B Bonbon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed, but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Ready Steady Cook South Africa. The Thriller Minute Daily Treat is sure to spice up your Monday to Friday menu from Monday 18 March at 7 p.m. If you and someone you know think you're ready and steady to cook along the esteemed chefs on this juicy television show, you can WhatsApp the producers on 068 675 2542. Channel your inner 5-star chef with Ready Steady Cook. Weekdays at 7 p.m. only on
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
5 minutes to 8 the time. Your story of the week. A lot going on as well, of course, this week. A lot of it around former President Jacob Zuma, but not all of it. Dumisani and Klaberga, hi. The robbery of schools there. It's incredible, Dumisani, isn't it?
It is. Morning, Steve. It is, Steve. It is incredible. It is risky. And it's a shame on all of us. Two issues that I would want to put on the table, Steve. The MEC was there. I would love to have asked him whether there's been a South African Intelligence Services report that has been generated on this sketch of security of schools robberies. That's one. Two, police have got a unit, crime intelligence. Have they generated a report? And what are the trends identified in those reports that may be a causal factor for these robberies?
So, I mean, I'm sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt you, Dumisani. I hear I think you're the third or the fourth person to say police intelligence. I don't know if it's necessarily, I mean, I don't live there, but I don't know if it's necessarily that complicated. These are groups of people who have no means to earn an income. They've grown up in a society that has high levels of violence, and they have access to guns. So what they're going to do is they're going to get their friend, they're going to use the gun to steal anything. I don't know if we need police intelligence to work that out.
No, Steve, I'll tell you, I'll give you this picture. You've just been buying their story now. You must look into the establishment of private securities in this district in the past 18 months. You must look into those companies that have established their offices here. I am telling you, this has got a link to those security companies I'm not saying those companies are corrupt. I'm not by any means. But I'm saying if you look at what is happening in Forte with 171 million, it's a security contract tender that has been stretched beyond anyone's imagination. This is the same that comes now into this region to attack public facilities in order to generate money for private individuals.
So you reckon that this is all some sort of play? This is all some kind of, deliberate thing?
Steve, that's why I'm reckoning it is. And that's why I'm asking those two reports. What are those two reports telling us? Because remember, who pass so huge amounts of public funds into this, while there's a huge need on the other side. We just have to be led by intelligence reports where intelligence is required.
All right, Dumisani Klaberga, thank you. Very interesting idea. Kandisa and Matlasana, hi. Service delivery.
Morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, Kandisa. Friday's here. Go for it.
Good, Stephen. Stephen, look, man, we have to be honest on issue of service delivery. Because there's no government can work without people to pay services. But we have to correct something. There are people who are hiding behind poor people. And they will use everything to say people are not getting water, there are potholes. Yes, there are potholes. But how can you fix those potholes if people are not paying services? And this government has done for poor people, has done individual subsidy for people who are not working, people who don't have any income. Now, people who don't want to pay for services, there are people who are working, people who have a lot of money, who have businesses. And my worry is, Stephen, these political parties, before they start with processes of elections, they must make sure that all candidates, they check whether they pay services. Even councillors, they must be checked that they pay services, because there's no government can work without not paying services.
It's a really,
and it's a reality.
Yeah, no,
You see, who have money, they don't want to pay services, and these councillors, they don't pay services.
All right, Kandisa, it's a really interesting idea. Thank you. A good idea, actually, to go and check on that. Kandisa on the line from Matlasana. All right, well, that is our week. Kathy is next. Been a busy week, as always. I expect things to get sort of busier as the elections come closer. Look after yourself. I'm going to spend the weekend looking for my voice. If someone's got a pair of binoculars to help me find it, I'll be very grateful. From Zelma, Melissa, and Stanza, myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM, leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, IEC approaching Constitutional Court to set aside MK party ruling, and service delivery tops newly elected Ekurhuleni mayor's priorities. Good morning. The Electoral Commission has confirmed it has filed an application in the Constitutional Court to seek leave to appeal the ruling of the Electoral Court in favour of the Umkhonto weSizwe party. This despite the fact that the Electoral Court has not yet furnished its reasons for ruling against the Commission, which had disqualified the party leader Jacob Zuma from running for a seat in the National Assembly. The disqualification followed a member of the public's contest against Zuma's candidature. The Electoral Court emailed its verdict to both the Commission and the party on Tuesday. The Road Accident Fund is urging claimants who submitted their claims before April 2022 to submit all outstanding documents to the Compensation Fund in order to finalise their claims. The fund currently has a backlog of 321,000 claims. RIF spokesperson is Macintosh Pulela.
We want to make sure that we get rid of these claims or finalize them as soon as possible to reduce our backlog. But also what it does is that it gets rid or it finalizes claims that should have been finalized a long time ago. And hence we're making this call. If you filed your claim before April 2022, we consider your claim that it should by now have been finalized, and we're calling for you to come forward with all the documentation that is needed.
Johannesburg City Power has confirmed one of its contractors has been arrested for allegedly reconnecting electricity to a property that owes the power utility 3.8 million rand in arrears. City Power says it handed the contractor to the Boysons Police, where he was charged with bribery and tampering with essential infrastructure. The bribery charge relates to the contractor's alleged involvement in the unlawful electricity reconnection in two other cases. City Power has put internal controls in place, which it says are proving effective. The newly elected Ekurhuleni Mayor Nkosi Ndiphile Xhakaza has undertaken to make service delivery his top